A colleague with a head of stone greets Jin-yong as he reminds her of his rule to treat women like rocks. He responds in a very awkward way and reinforces that this has become an unshackable belief to protect himself from trauma. It all started back in elementary school when Jin-yong ended up being rejected by girls 20 times in a row. The reasons for the rejections were as bizarre as possible, and that slowly destroyed the poor guy's self-esteem. The boy was completely devastated and cried a lot because he felt extremely hurt by so many rejections. With no confidence left, he decided to create an imaginary friend to ask for advice on how to deal with it. This imaginary friend he created is called Jason and appears to offer support during this difficult time. Jason's advice for solving the problem was quite simple and consisted of thinking of all the girls as stones. Jin-yong spent years meditating and training his mind to constantly repeat that women were just rocks. With the start of elementary school, the training went so well that the girls really looked like stone statues. Back in the present, Jin-yong is called over by a classmate in the school hallway and has to deal with the situation. The stone girl asks if he wants to study after class, but warns him not to get his hopes up. He knows very well that a simple smile or invitation doesn't mean the girl is actually interested in him. To avoid any chance of getting hurt again, Jin-yong pretends he's busy and declines her invitation. He realizes that viewing women as stones has made the task of conversing with them infinitely easier. After all, it's very simple to talk to a rock without letting any kind of feeling interfere with the conversation. Jin-yong then decides to call his faithful imaginary friend Jason to confirm if he agrees with this thought. Jason, who is now transformed into an extremely muscular man, fully agrees with the boy's logic. Despite supporting his friend, the muscular Jason confesses that he worries about him ending up alone and never dating anyone. Jin-yong immediately retorts, reminding them that the two had already decided to completely give up on this whole romance thing. He prefers to live peacefully like this, rather than having to hear that he's weird, that he's not some girl's type. As he calmly walks out of the school, a mysterious person notices a cell phone lying on the ground. Suddenly, Jin-yong hears a female voice calling his name and turns around to see who is there. Mysterious person extends their hand, holding the device, and warns that he ended up dropping the object. A beautiful girl with black hair says the cell phone looks like it belongs to him as she slowly approaches. She hands over the phone with a friendly smile, asking directly if the device really belongs to him. Jin-yong is completely shocked when he looks at her and feels his heart race at this unexpected encounter. The boy's eyes widen, unable to understand anything that is happening at that moment. While the young woman is confused by his silence, Jin-yong desperately wonders why she isn't a rock. He completely panics when he realizes it's been far too long since he's looked directly at a real girl's face. Jin-yong tries his best to control himself and mentally begs to remain calm in the face of this crazy situation. The girl finds his reaction strange and asks why he isn't answering anything while continuing to stare intently at her. Sweat begins to trickle down the boy's face due to the extreme nervousness of being so close to a real woman. Unable to think straight, Jin-yong suddenly blurts out that he finds a girl extremely beautiful. He freezes instantly when he realizes the terrible mistake he just made by saying that out loud. The young woman is completely surprised and blushes, the sudden compliment coming from a complete stranger. She awkwardly thanks him while Jin-yong falls into utter despair for having acted so impulsively. He grabs the phone, quickly thanks them for the favor, and apologizes before running away as fast as possible. The girl stands in the middle of the courtyard, completely bewildered by his strange reaction. Jin-yong runs desperately through the streets, cursing himself for being an idiot and ruining everything like that. He keeps beating himself up for having complimented the beauty of a girl he just met along the way. His biggest fear now is that this bizarre situation will turn into a terrible rumor around the school and ruin his peace forever. The scene then changes to the large apartment complex where Jin-yong lives and tries to hide from all this commotion. Back home, Jason tries to calm his friend down, saying that he actually thought his attitude was quite cute and daring. Jin-yong remains super depressed on the floor, while his muscular imaginary friend asks him not to be so hard on himself. The boy can't understand why that girl alone didn't appear as a stone to him. Jason admits he doesn't know the answer to this mystery and asks what his friend plans to do from now on. Jin-yong is desperate because he fears some strange rumor might spread if he simply ignores what happened. He is terrified of going through all that past suffering again and being labeled weird by everyone. Jason regrets that such a situation occurred, even after all the boy's arduous mental training. Jin-yong huddles in the corner of the room, lamenting that everything in his life is completely ruined. Jason punches his friend in the head to wake him up to reality and stop him from whining. The boy complains of pain from the blow, while his muscular friend warns him not to freak out and to quickly come up with a plan. Jason suggests that the best thing to do from now on is simply to avoid any contact with the girl. He remembers that she's from another room and that the chances of them crossing paths again are very low if he's careful. Jin-yong agrees to the plan and convinces himself that there's no reason to panic if he can just manage to evade her. The next day, classes start as normal and the boy tries to continue his previous routine without major problems. The beautiful girl suddenly appears in the school hallway and waves cheerfully, asking if he remembers her. Jin-yong is paralyzed with panic when he realizes that his plan to avoid the young woman failed on the first day. He cries out for divine help while his friend Jason tells him to stay calm and try to act naturally. Jin-yong decides to treat the girl indifferently, just like he does with all the other stone girls at school. To his surprise, the young woman tells her friend that Jin-yong was the boy who called her pretty the day before. The stone friend is shocked by the revelation, while the girl confesses to being very surprised by the audacity. The boy starts sweating profusely from nervousness as he realizes his reputation is in serious danger of being completely ruined. The girl strikes a charming pose and jokingly asks if she also looks pretty today. Jin-yong is completely speechless as the two girls start laughing at him in the middle of the hallway. Unable to withstand the pressure, Jin-yong simply turns around and runs away, leaving the girl confused. Jason praises the quick escape, saying it was a smart move to avoid getting into more trouble. The boy runs away, convincing himself that those laughs were just a provocation to make fun of him. He tries to keep his feet on the ground and promises himself not to harbor illusions, that she might be interested in him. While the girl is upset about the situation, Jin-yong swears up and down that he will never cross her path again. However, things in the young man's life rarely turn out exactly as he plans in his head. The young woman stands out absurdly amidst all the other stone girls walking around the courtyard. She spots the boy from afar and decides to greet him with a friendly wave, ignoring his attempts to evade the camera. With no way out, Jin-yong suddenly dashes off and hides behind a bush at the school to avoid being seen. He starts to avoid her in the hallway, pretending he didn't even see her pass by, and completely ignores the young woman's presence. The boy runs from one side to the other, covering his eyes whenever he notices she is nearby. The girl starts to get very annoyed with all this unnecessary rejection and his strange behavior. At the end of the day, he sighs with relief at having managed to survive yet another day of intense detours. Tired of running around so much, Jin-yong returns home, desperately needing to devise a new strategy. He walks thoughtfully, wondering how his peaceful school life ended up turning into this madness. Suddenly, the girl appears right in front of him with an extremely serious and frightening expression. Jin-yong almost dies of fright at the surprise appearance as she coldly asks if he managed to scare him. He trembles with fear, unable to understand why fate insists on making them bump into each other all the time. The young woman stares at him intently and asks point blank if he's just going to run away from her again this time. She complains that it's unbelievable that she tries to be friendly while he continues to ignore her presence. The young woman angrily vents, saying that he avoids her gaze and asks if she did something wrong to him. Jin-yong hears her say that he's a very strange guy and is so embarrassed he doesn't know where to hide his face. Desperate to realize he has created a huge misunderstanding, he tries to quickly come up with an excuse to justify himself. He begins to stammer, unable to form a decent sentence under the girl's attentive and impatient gaze. His mind is racing, trying to invent any convincing lie to get out of that mess. Under pressure, Jin-yong ends up confessing that all girls seem like stones to him except for the young woman herself. The bizarre revelation leaves the girl completely speechless as she digests the strange statement. He realizes in the same second the colossal nonsense he has just uttered and feels a terrible chill down his spine. Jin-yong mentally pleads for help while his friend Jason appears. Completely shocked by the revelation, the girl froze, staring at the boy with cheeks flushed with shyness after hearing that phrase. The poor boy's hands begin to tremble uncontrollably with so much regret and extreme nervousness. Jin-yong trembles with terror all over, unable to look her in the eye after revealing his biggest secret. The girl shows a discreet reaction upon hearing that and begins to give a slight smile at the corner of her mouth. In the light of dusk, she breaks into a beautiful smile, finding the whole embarrassing situation of the young man very funny. The girl asks his name and the boy stutters quite a bit when he replies that his name is Park Jin-yong. She moves even closer, touching his tie, and asks if she can tell him something. The young woman approaches his face and says in a provocative tone that what he just said was flirting. Jin-yong is completely paralyzed and shocked by the girl's sudden proximity. He then remembers the valuable advice his imaginary friend Jason gave him when he was a child. The initial advice to treat women like rocks ultimately failed miserably at that time. The second rule was never to nurture false hopes, so as not to end up getting hurt. But this rule also completely fails because Jin-yong's heart starts beating super fast. His mind wanders, imagining a lifetime of marriage with that girl. That moment, the muscular Jason appears and hits Jin-yong on the head to wake him from his trance. The boy tries to justify himself by saying that it has been 5 years since he last looked at a girl's real face. Jin-yong realizes that simply running away from her won't work anymore and asks his friend what he should do. Jason points his finger and states with conviction that the most important thing in these situations is to set a clear objective. He explains that seeing women as stones helped the boy stay calm and feel absolutely nothing. This bizarre method was very effective because it prevented Jin-yong from getting heartbroken again. But the whole plan fell apart when that young woman appeared who looked nothing like a heartless rock. Jason adds that he didn't develop any immunity against real girls, which brought out his awkward side. Jin-yong admits that his friend is right and fears that everything will end tragically like in the past. In any case, the muscular man warns that now the boy only needs to keep his composure around her. The next day, classes begin and the atmosphere at the school seems quite calm for the students. Jin-yong walks down the hallway with an extremely sullen and tense expression, drawing everyone's attention. The beautiful young woman with black hair observes the boy from afar with an expression that mixes curiosity and surprise. The girl's friend comments, frightened, that Jin-yong is staring at her with a very scary expression. Jin-yong asks Mini Jason what the plan was even while struggling to see from afar. The desensitization plan consists of staring at her until he gets used to it, and Jason suggests that he try smiling a little. The boy tries to smile but ends up making a bizarre and frightening face that would scare anyone. The girl is visibly embarrassed and confused by the dreadful expression directed at her. The friend celebrates, saying that Jin-yong smiled at her, while the young woman simply doesn't know how to react. The friend finds it strange that he's so obvious in his staring and wonders if he thinks she can't see him. Jin-yong thinks distance prevents her from seeing his expression, but Jason confesses that he's uncomfortable watching it. The friend warns them to leave before the other students start jumping to the wrong conclusions. The young woman with black hair watches the boy walk away and becomes thoughtful about his behavior. The friend in the yellow hoodie reveals that Jin-yong is actually quite popular with the girls at school. The young woman is surprised by the information, and her friend continues, saying that some have already tried to talk to him. She adds that the boy simply doesn't show the slightest interest in any of the girls at school. Ironically, this nonchalant, cool guy attitude is what makes girls more interested in him. The friend asks if she became curious about the boy simply because he stared at her. The young woman tries to hide her shyness and says that's not exactly what's happening. She remembers that moment when the boy complimented her in the middle of the street with such spontaneity. The young woman gives a very charming smile and admits that there's something about him that she can't get out of her head. Back in the classroom, the boy calls his imaginary friend over to talk about the situation. Jin-yong confesses that the more he thinks about the desensitization plan, the less it seems like a good idea. He explains that to get used to her face, he would need to keep following and staring at the young woman all the time. The boy realizes that acting this way would turn him into a stalker, which would make everything even worse. Jason agrees that he's in a terrible dilemma between looking weird or acting like a real stalker. Then the muscular friend suggests that looking at pictures of her online would be much better than staring at her in person. He gives a thumbs up and says the idea is great, but warns that the guy will have to ask for her profile. Asking in person seems daunting, but searching secretly on the internet would be even stranger. The boy imagines himself stuttering and trembling all over as he tries to ask the young woman for her profile in the middle of the hallway. He sees the young woman patiently waiting for his reaction, which makes him even more tense. The young woman agrees to share her social media profile without hesitation, making Jin-yong extremely happy. She asks him to open the app so she can type her username into the phone herself. The girl picks up the device with a friendly smile and begins to look at the information on it, but suddenly her expression changes, and she lets out a murmur of utter surprise as she looks at the screen. The screen shows that the guy's profile was newly created with absolutely no posts or followers. She asks curiously if he just created that account just to talk to her. The boy feels awkward and explains that he doesn't use social media much, which is why he created the account so quickly. The young woman starts laughing quite loudly, leaving Jin-yong completely confused. She realizes that he went straight to look for her the moment she finished creating the profile. Jin-yong stands there, frozen, unable to quite grasp the girl's line of reasoning. That point, he realizes the embarrassing situation and understands that he really did exactly that while she's having fun. The boy mentally laments, having acted impulsively without thinking first. Desperate, he cries out for help to his imaginary friend Jason, who also seems unresponsive. The boy stammers, trying to explain that she was the first person he met after creating the account. The young woman continues to find his confusing and awkward explanation very funny. She gestures playfully, asking him to calm down and stop justifying himself so much. Suddenly, she brings her cell phone closer, displaying the numeric keypad, and asks if he wants her number. Jin-yong's eyes widen behind his glasses, unable to believe what he's hearing. The boy is completely speechless, stammering at such a direct and unexpected proposal. The girl playfully pats his chest, revealing that it was just a funny joke. She returns the phone, letting him know that she has already started following him back on social media. The young woman bids farewell to Jin-yong, jokingly asking him to like her posts a lot. The boy is left alone in the school hallway, trying to process everything that just happened. He once again loses himself in romantic thoughts, imagining a happy marriage with her. His imaginary friend appears on his shoulder to tell him to stop these daydreams immediately. Night falls quickly over the city, and the lights of the large residential complex come on. Meanwhile, the beautiful girl is lying comfortably in her bed, scrolling through her phone. She lets out an amused laugh as she analyzes the posts on Jin-yong's newly created profile. The boy's profile picture is a very funny selfie that doesn't make much sense by normal standards. In his room, Jin-yong sleeps soundly while the cell phone on the bedside table begins to glow. The notification on the screens that young Sunwoo has just liked the photo he posted. The young woman's like represents the first step towards a closer relationship between the two. The next day, the friend in the yellow hoodie is completely speechless when she hears all the news. Sunwoo confirms, laughing, that he made a new account just to ask for contact information, and his friend thinks it's amazing. The friend then comments that she has a big doubt about the boy's usual behavior. Sunwoo asks if it's true that he's not interested in girls, and his friend confirms that it's true. While they are talking, they see Jin-yong passing by outside the hallway window of the room. Sunwoo decides to propose an immediate test to prove whether the theory about the boy actually works. Suddenly, a loud scream echoes down the hallway, drawing Jin-yong's attention, who looks back. The colleague in the yellow hoodie pretends to have fallen to the ground in a rather exaggerated and dramatic way. She strikes a sweet pose, trying to look fragile while pretending she just got hurt. She sweetly says that it would be very nice if Jin-yong came to help her get up from there. To Jin-yong, the girl lying on the ground is just another stone with no special appeal. The boy simply pulls the girl by the hood of her coat in a bizarre and careless way. Jin-yong continues on her way normally, leaving her colleague completely stunned in the hallway. Sunwoo can't contain himself and starts laughing hysterically at the absurd scene he witnessed. She jokes that Jin-yong lifted her off the ground as if he were picking a giant radish in the field. The friend gets extremely annoyed by the joke and grumbles angrily at the boy's lack of tact. While the friends have fun, the school routine continues as usual. In the courtyard, Jason asks the boy if he's getting used to looking at Sunwoo's face. Jin-yong is startled upon hearing the question and feels his cheeks turn completely red with embarrassment. He confesses to his friend that he still feels incredibly shy every time he looks at her photos. The muscular Jason states thoughtfully that they need to find out the real reason for this once and for all. Jin-yong is intrigued, trying to understand why only that young woman doesn't look like a statue. While he's formulating some theories in his mind, a coughing sound right behind him makes the boy freeze. He notices that young Sunwoo is standing right nearby and wonders what she is doing. The girl notices his presence in the schoolyard and turns around slowly with a surprised expression. She calls out to him happily in the hallway, but the sudden approach leaves the poor boy in a panic. Jin-yong tries to stay in control, but extreme nervousness quickly takes over his entire body. She approaches and explains, very casually, that she needs to go home but forgot her bus fare. When asked where she lives, the boy is shocked to hear that her building is the same as his. Jin-yong says she could just walk there, since it's very close, but the young woman says it's not that easy. The girl gives a forced smile, showing some embarrassment as she tries to explain herself to him. She reveals that she suffers from chronic anemia and therefore does not have the strength to endure long walks. Worried, Jin-yong opens his wallet and offers her the little money he has to pay for the bus fare. She refuses, saying it would look like a robbery, and suggests that the boy accompany her on the way back. She starts walking excitedly, leading the way, while the boy follows her, still unsure of what to do. Jin-yong feels completely struck by a surge of nervousness at this unexpected turn of events. As the day fades and dusk approaches, he remembers an important piece of advice given by his colleague. Sunwoo walks beside him, chattering happily about various topics without stopping for a single second. The boy is so focused on her presence that he simply cannot hear a single word she says. She notices his silence and asks if he's listening while Jin-yong continues to panic inside. The boy feels extremely uncomfortable and tense during that shared walk, which was so intimate. He recalls that in the past, he also used to walk with a girl and inevitably ended up falling in love with her. Then some boys at school started making fun of the two of them and gossiping about why they were hanging out together. When asked if they were dating, the girl vehemently denied it and became very angry. She blurted out cruel words, saying aloud that she would never date someone as weird as Jin-yong. After that humiliating day, the girl never went out with him again, and his childhood sweetheart ended there. All these painful memories make the boy wish that journey would end as quickly as possible. Jin-yong comforts himself thinking that she usually goes by bus and notices that she lets out a weak groan. He looks back in shock, realizing that something bad has just happened to the young woman. The girl is lying on the floor, completely pale and weak due to her severe anemia crisis. Jin-yong runs towards her, extremely worried, and asks if she tripped over something. Sunwoo complains about the steep climb and reminds the boy that she actually suffers from very severe anemia. She extends her hand asking for help to walk, and the boy agrees to help even though he is very nervous. He holds her firmly to carefully lift her, while she quietly thanks him for his help. The young woman complains of feeling very dizzy, while Jin-yong turns completely red as he holds her hand. She breathes with difficulty, her cheeks flushed, as she tries to catch her breath little by little. Jin-yong tries to look away to hide the colossal embarrassment he's feeling at that moment. He then remembers when he simply lifted his fallen colleague in a rather ungentle manner. The girl next to him starts giggling amusedly as she remembers that whole bizarre scene. She jokingly says that he pulled his colleague like a radish, and Jin-yong tries to pretend he doesn't know anything. She announces that she has finally arrived at her residence and advises that the two can say goodbye there. Sunwoo thanks him for the company and bids him a cheerful farewell, while the boy sighs in relief that it's over. Jin-yong walks back home thinking about how extremely uncomfortable the whole situation was. He hopes this never happens again and expects her to bring the bus fare the next day. He also hopes she can treat her anemia so that her silly thoughts will finally stop. The two go their separate ways in a beautiful image under the orange late afternoon sky in the city. But as she walks, young Sunwoo suddenly stops for a moment, letting out a sound of surprise. She gives a very mischievous smile when she realizes she forgot a super important detail. While walking distractedly, the boy is startled to hear the young Sunwoo shouting for him in the street. He looks back and the girl explains that it will take a while for her to receive her allowance from her family. She says with a mischievous smile that she will count on his help again the next day. Sunwoo complains that he ran too much to catch up with him, and that's why he's feeling dizzy again. Jin-yong feels very uncomfortable, wanting only to avoid the young woman, while Jason becomes thoughtful. Jason wonders, intrigued, what the real meaning is of that silly expression on the boy's face. Suddenly, Jin-yong lets out a startled gasp upon hearing a falling noise right in front of him. He looks ahead and sees Sunwoo lying on the ground, completely exhausted from the physical exertion. The boy becomes desperate, asking if she is all right, and tells her to just sit down and rest. At home, the muscular, shirtless Jason decides to resume the discussion about why Sunwoo doesn't look like a rock. Jin-yong sits on the floor, lost in thought, trying to find a logical reason for this great mystery. The boy then begins to reveal one of his strongest theories to try to explain what happened. He adopts a serious expression as he prepares to share his reasoning with his muscular friend. However, at the last moment he hesitates and lets out a confused murmur, unable to say anything. Jason asks if that's the only possible reason, and the boy admits he can't think of anything else. Jin-yong grabs his black backpack, deciding to postpone that difficult conversation because of his school schedule. He opens the front door and heads out into the building's hallway, ready to start another day of classes. Suddenly, a male voice asks if he is going to school, which intrigues the boy. He sees his father standing in the hallway with a rather serious expression and greets him in a restrained manner. The father stutters awkwardly while saying good morning, demonstrating that their relationship is quite distant. When asked if he had already had coffee, Jin-yong awkwardly replied that he intended to skip the meal because he wasn't hungry. The father insists, mentioning that the mother prepared kimchi stew, and the boy promises to eat it when he returns. The man walks away, asking him to eat before leaving, and the boy simply accepts his father's instructions. He finally closes the outer door, bidding farewell with a discreet sigh at the awkward moment. Jin-yong walks thoughtfully, his gaze filled with worry as he lingers over memories of his former love. He arrives at the school and reflects on Jason's advice while observing the students' movements. Jin-yong laments that he seems destined to be harassed by Sunwoo, and Jason warns that there's nothing he can do. The boy hopes his theory is wrong, unaware that someone is approaching just ahead. Suddenly, a voice pronounces his name directly, causing the boy to turn around startled. The colleague in the yellow hoodie is standing with her arms crossed and an extremely defiant posture. She warns him seriously that she's going to give him a beating, leaving Jin-yong completely confused by the threat. He looks at her, completely bewildered, and asks what the reason for such hostility is. The girl says she spent the night practicing low kicks to hurt him, but the boy doesn't even remember her. She vents, saying she's never experienced such humiliation in her life, but Jin-yong doesn't understand why. She recalls the moment she was lifted by her coat, like a radish, and says she will never forgive him. Girl menacingly warns that she will be generous and will only deliver 3 painful kicks to him. Jin-yong tries to back away and stammers, trying to understand why he has to go through that gratuitous aggression. She screams furiously, telling him to shut up, and launches an attack with a powerful kick towards him. The boy panics completely and runs down the school hallway, fleeing his classmates' fury. She runs after him, shouting that she is very fast, and unlike Sunwoo, she doesn't have anemia. Jin-yong glances out of the corner of his eye and is horrified to notice that the girl is approaching very quickly. To make matters worse, the young woman now looks like a terrifying rock rolling swiftly behind him. He falls into utter despair as he senses a huge, out-of-control rock about to crush him. The young woman manages to catch up with him in the hallway and shouts victoriously as she prepares to deliver the blow. She raises her leg with extreme force and positions her foot to deliver the painful low kick to him. The boy's eyes widen and he lets out a scream of terror when he realizes there is no way to escape from there. Suddenly, Sunwoo appears in the hallway, drawn by the loud noise, and is extremely startled. The girl in the yellow hoodie misses her target and ends up hitting young Sunwoo squarely in the leg by mistake. Sunwoo's eyes widen and he displays an expression of extreme pain at the unexpected impact of the blow. The aggressor colleague is completely paralyzed and in shock when she realizes the terrible mistake she has made. Sunwoo falls to the ground in immense pain, and the diagnosis is a torn ligament in his ankle. Jin-yong is completely horrified and speechless as he witnesses the terrible accident right in front of him. The boy runs desperately to try and help her, but ends up slipping disastrously on his own flip-flop. He suffers a spectacular face-first fall to the ground while his yellow, hooded colleague watches in disbelief. To make matters worse, the nasty fall causes the boy to break his nose on impact. Now the two are lying motionless on the school floor under the completely bewildered gaze of their classmate. The aggressor is completely shocked, not knowing how to react to the double disaster she has caused. The girl desperately apologizes as the two injured people are taken straight to the infirmary. Jin-yong and Sunwoo are shown lying on adjacent stretchers in the infirmary, recovering from their injuries. Sunwoo comments that his friend has always been a little weird, while Jin-yong tries to pretend that everything is fine. The boy realizes with some nervousness that he has ended up alone in an enclosed space with Sunwoo again. His imaginary friend appears dressed in an elegant suit, drinking tea, and warns him not to act silly. Jin-yong tenses up when he realizes he's actually alone with the girl in a very intimate situation. He mentally begs himself not to say anything completely stupid while she rests on the stretcher. The young woman turns to face him and asks, curiously, if he knows what they will have for lunch that day. He replies that he thinks it will be fried fish, and she happily exclaims that she loves that dish. Sunwoo asks if he usually eats breakfast and is intrigued to learn that he often skips the meal. He explains that his father is always home in the morning, and finding the situation uncomfortable, he prefers to leave early. The young woman gently suggests that he try to get along with his father, and Jin-yong awkwardly agrees. At that moment, the boy remembers something that the aggressor friend had also commented to him before. He vividly remembers the first sentence he said to her when he complimented her beauty in the middle of the street. At first, he thought he had said that simply because he hadn't looked at a real girl in a long time, but observing her now in the infirmary, he has to admit that she is simply wonderful in every way. Sunwoo notices she's being stared at and playfully teases the boy by asking if she's too pretty. Jin-yong jumps up, stuttering desperately to try and deny it, while she laughs at his reaction. She apologizes, laughing, saying it was a joke, and the boy wonders, embarrassed, if she was mocking him. The girl humorously confesses that she finds it extremely fun to tease and joke with him. The boy asks, confused, what she means by that, and she reaffirms exactly what she just said. She explains that just a small push is enough to make him panic and say the most bizarre things possible. The boy awkwardly apologizes, but she gives a friendly laugh, telling him not to apologize for it. She gives an extremely sweet smile and affectionately confesses that she finds the boy very cute. Jin-yong turns completely red with shyness and begins to wonder if Jason's advice was correct. The mystery of her being the only real girl in his world begins to make sense with a strong theory. The muscular Jason adopts a rather serious tone and reveals with conviction the conclusion to this whole mystery. The truth is, the boy ended up falling madly in love with Sunwoo at first sight. Jason elegantly sips his tea and concludes by stating that there is no other logical explanation. Jason's revelation echoes in the boy's mind as silence settles in the school infirmary. The day continues sunny and peaceful at the school as the students remain in their classrooms. He remembers the moment he grabbed his aggressor friend from behind to teach her a lesson she deserved. Sunwoo clenches her fists angrily and demands that he take responsibility for what he did. Demanding an explanation, she prepares herself determined to deliver a blow and lets out a war cry, launching her attack. With a spectacular medium kick, she hits her yellow, hooded teammate who was being immobilized by Jin-yong. The boy ends up falling backward, completely surprised and not understanding why he got himself into that mess. He is completely shocked when he reflects on the imaginary friend theory of it being love at first sight. He focuses his gaze on Sunwoo's back, trying to decipher the confused feelings in his chest. The young woman provocatively comments on the exaggerated fantasies and expectations he has been creating. She turns around with a disdainful look, calling the boy a pathetic loser in a rather harsh manner. Suddenly, Jin-yong wakes up startled in his bed, realizing that it was all just a terrible nightmare. He wipes the sweat from his face, relieved to realize that her insults were merely a figment of his imagination. Then his imaginary friend Jason appears, sitting next to him, also in pajamas and breathing heavily. Your friend Jason thoughtfully comments on the bizarre dream, in which Sunwoo coldly rejects the boy. Jin-yong reluctantly agrees, and Jason points out that his old trauma with girls seems to be returning. The boy confesses that he has been having this same nightmare repeatedly, and Jason asks how long this has been happening. He replies that it all started when they came up with the theory that it was love at first sight for Sunwoo. Jason directly adds that if the theory is correct, then it's a one-sided passion. Jin-yong remains silent, depressed, and his friend states that what he is truly feeling is fear. To help him, Jason gives a thumbs up and quotes a famous military proverb about knowing your enemy. The boy concludes that the plan consists of obtaining more information about Sunwoo, and his friend fully agrees. He admits that he knows almost nothing about her and thinks this investigation strategy is very good. Jin-yong arrives in front of the corresponding classroom and confirms that this is where Sunwoo studies. The boy feels extremely nervous as he opens the door, and Jason tries to calm him down so he doesn't tremble so much. He enters quietly and begins to observe the students present in the empty classroom to try to locate her. Noticing that the young woman is not present, he thoughtfully deduces that she may have gone to the bathroom. Suddenly, a firm voice calls the boy's attention from behind, causing him to turn around in surprise. He encounters a bespectacled boy named Jaemin, who complains about him being in front of his wallet. Jin-yong feels awkward with the abrupt approach of his unknown colleague and tries to apologize quickly. He apologizes and makes room while the chubby boy sits at the table with a sullen expression. Jason gets furious at the student's rudeness and says he'd love to punch him in the face. Jin-yong ignores Jason's anger and politely asks if he knows where young Sunwoo is. Jaemin stares at him with disdain and comments disinterestedly that situations like that happen frequently. The boy adds, laughing, that there are always love-struck and silly boys chasing after girls like Sunwoo. Jin-yong becomes deeply irritated by the prejudiced and rude way that colleague speaks about her. This time Jason appears wielding a giant machine gun, and the boy desperately begs him to hold back. The boy almost curses his classmate, but holds back and asks again if he really doesn't know where she went. Jaemin retorts sarcastically, asking how he would know where such a peculiar girl is. Jin-yong becomes serious and firmly orders him not to speak ill of Sunwoo, but the boy only mocks him. Jaemin mocks the boy, saying that he too was completely captivated by the young woman's charms and beauty. Jin-yong, annoyed by the teasing, tells Jaemin to stand up, claiming he has something important to give him. The chubby boy gets up complaining about being lazy, while Jin-yong positions himself right behind him. Suddenly, Jin-yong grabs his teammate from behind, holding his arms firmly, and prepares his offensive. At that moment, a flip-flop thrown forcefully flies through the air and hits Jaemin, leaving the boy breathless from the impact. The boy takes another sharp blow and is completely unbalanced by the speed and force of the attack. He is repeatedly and painfully struck by rapid blows that leave him completely bewildered. Sunwoo opens the classroom door and comments in shock that it looks like they're slaughtering a pig in there. Upon seeing the young woman enter the place, Jin-yong freezes in shock and shouts her name in utter embarrassment. The boy tries to justify himself by saying that he was hitting him because he had spoken rudely about her. To the boy's surprise, Sunwoo gives a friendly smile and says that he can continue with the punches. Jin-yong asks, confused, why she's reacting like that, and his pained colleague just murmurs, grumbling on the floor. The young woman winks sweetly and reveals that the boy with glasses has behaved this way since childhood. Juman blushes shyly, confirming that the two are great childhood friends of long standing. Time passes and the scene changes the school's outer courtyard with a blue sky under a few white clouds. Sitting on a bench, Jin-yong sincerely apologizes for the aggression, and his colleague assures him that everything is fine. Jin-yong asks if they've been friends since they were little, and Jiuman confirms that they've known each other since they were 3 years old. The boy is thrilled to realize that this is the perfect opportunity to get important gossip about her. However, Jiuman throws a bucket of cold water on the situation by seriously warning the boy that he should give up on her. He explains that the young woman is extremely popular and that there's a huge line of boys behind her. Jiuman concludes by seriously revealing that the number of boys who have been successful with her is 0. Jin-yong admits that she already imagined such popularity because of her large number of followers. Jiuman ponders that perhaps none of those suitors were the type of boy she truly likes, but the colleague with glasses warns in a mysterious tone that that is not the real reason for his advice. He says he's known Moon Sawa since they were just 2 little kids in kindergarten. 2 always ended up studying at the same schools, which brought them quite close over the years. Jiuman reports that something very unusual started happening during elementary school. The boy with glasses remembers when he used to ask his friend to buy bread for him because he had nothing to do. Jiuman was extremely surprised when he noticed a sudden change in her usual attitude. From that moment on, he began to feel that there was something very strange about Sunwoo's behavior. She continued smiling as usual, but she didn't look anything like the Sunwoo he truly knew. Back at the school bench, the classmate assures that this feeling of strangeness lasts to this day. Jiuman concludes by saying that this mystery is the main reason why she told the boy to give up on winning her over. Jin-yong walks back, reflecting on what that strange feeling coming from Sunwoo meant. The boy wonders what this bizarre feeling could be. Since he never noticed anything wrong with her, Jin-yong decides to ignore everything, thinking that it was just a silly personal opinion from the other boy. Suddenly, Jiuman lets out an exclamation of surprise, causing Jin-yong to freeze in the hallway. The 2 girls appear holding hands, and Sunwoo asks in surprise if the 2 boys have already become this close. Jin-yong tries to make up a quick lie, because she knows she can't reveal that they were gossiping about her. But to Jin-yong's dismay, the chubby boy brazenly confesses that they were talking badly about her behind her back. The boy enters a state of absolute panic, mentally cursing his colleague's stupid honesty. An awkward silence fills the hallway as everyone awaits Sunwoo's reaction. The young woman asks in surprise if they really gossiped about her, and Jin-yong desperately tries to deny everything. The colleague in the yellow hoodie takes the opportunity to mock him, saying that his true character has been revealed. Jiuman insists on provoking her, saying he criticized every detail of her, making Jin-yong even angrier. Unable to control himself, the boy lunges at Jiuman, yelling at him to shut up once and for all. He hits Jiuman squarely with a snapping blow from his jacket to the teasing boy's stomach. The boy continues attacking her childhood friend with quick and furious blows in the middle of the hallway. Your imaginary friend Jason appears wearing sunglasses, praising the attack and saying he almost shot fought his colleague. So-kyung watches the confusing fight while Sunwoo decides to leave, suggesting they ignore the two idiots. As he walks away, Sunwoo gives a discreet smile, finding the commotion the boys had created amusing. Classes finally come to an end, and the sunset begins to color the sky above the school. Jin-yong walks alone past the school exit, lost in thought, and murmurs that things are going very badly for him. He complains that he hasn't found out anything about Sunwoo and blames the chubby boy for creating more misunderstandings. The boy keeps brooding over his colleague's strange comments and wishes he would be punished for such nonsense. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls his name, causing the boy to turn around in surprise in the middle of the street. Sunwoo appears beside him, smiling, and provocatively asks if he enjoyed talking about her. The boy jumps in fright at the unexpected appearance and stammers her name. Completely disoriented, he becomes extremely embarrassed and red-faced, cursing her habit of appearing out of nowhere. The young woman lets out amused and cute giggles when she sees the boy's exaggerated and shy reaction. The boy tries to defend himself by saying that he didn't speak badly of her, and the young woman replies with a smile that she already knows that. She gives him a friendly pat on the back, saying she knows her childhood friend was just joking. Then she asks him to accompany her home, claiming that she still doesn't have money for the bus. Jin-yong sighs warily at the mere thought of how exhausting it will be to face that steep climb again. Jason appears thoughtful, analyzing that the situation is complex because they talked about her behind her back. Even without meaning to offend her, the boy concludes in his mind that the best thing to do for now is simply not to bring up the subject anymore. Suddenly, the young woman lets out a tired sigh, drawing the attention of Jin-yong, who watches her with concern. She whines slyly, saying that she deeply hates having to walk on streets with hills. Jin-yong questions whether a slight climb like that is really that difficult, and she replies irritably that it certainly is. She explains in detail how chronic anemia causes extreme fatigue and shortness of breath with any exertion. The young woman then points to his back and directly asks him to push her to help her climb. She urges him to hurry up and help while the boy stammers, timidly accepting the task. With trembling hands and sweating from nervousness, the boy brings his fingers closer to slowly touch her back. He starts pushing her uphill and the girl happily thanks him, saying it's become much easier. The young woman starts laughing, saying she feels ticklish, leaving the boy even more embarrassed and confused. She explains that she is quite sensitive to touch on her back, which further increases the boy's nervousness. Jin-yong is in total panic, thinking about how her jokes are messing with his head like this. The boy with glasses becomes thoughtful and begins to create various hypotheses in his mind about the two of them. He fantasizes about how nice it would be if the two of them were closer and more casual than they are currently. The boy imagines that in the future he might be able to climb that same hill carrying the girl on his back. His friend Jason appears clapping and ironically says that imagination was too sweet and romantic. Jin-yong tries to defend himself by claiming that daydreaming isn't harmful since he's not choosing names for his grandchildren. Jason agrees that he is free to imagine whatever he wants, but then immediately calls him over in a serious tone. Suddenly, Sunwoo yells, asking him to push slower because she's almost out of breath from running so much. Jin-yong gets startled and quickly apologizes, explaining that he got distracted for a few moments. He watches the girl recover and becomes concerned about her state of exhaustion. They stop at a viewpoint on the hillside, and the boy admires the stunning view of the city at sunset. He finds the place incredible and reflects that it's very nice to know that Sunwoo lives near such a beautiful area. Suddenly, he notices something different in the girl's behavior and focuses his attention on her, intrigued. Sunwoo confesses his surprise that he had never seen that viewpoint before, leaving Jin-yong quite surprised. She jokes that height isn't recommended for someone with chronic anemia, and he agrees. Laughing, the young woman playfully threatens the boy for making her climb up there, and Jin-yong apologizes, completely embarrassed. Even with the joke, the boy remains silent, observing the details of her face with admiration. She gently says that she will forgive him this time only because he showed her that beautiful viewpoint. Jin-yong stares at her in silence, his heart racing and a shyness he can't control. The young woman adjusts her hair with a charming smile on her face and comments softly on the beauty of the place. The boy is completely paralyzed and breathless in the face of the girl's spontaneous charm. He remembers her friend's cryptic words about something strange happening in Sunwoo's behavior. Jin-yong reflects that if not being able to take his eyes off her is the mystery, then he's affected by it too. The boy gathers his courage and decides to break the silence to clear up the misunderstanding with Ji-yuman once and for all. He calls her by name in a serious manner, immediately attracting the girl's curious and attentive gaze. The boy confesses with his head down that he really was talking about her with his childhood friend. Sunwoo asks in surprise if he spoke badly of her, and the boy stammers, vehemently denying any offense. He explains that he only discovered by chance. The two were great childhood friends and wanted to understand. With great embarrassment, he finally confesses the real reason for his curiosity about her life. Hearing that sincere declaration, Sunwoo's eyes widened in shock and his cheeks flushed. Jin-yong insists on swearing that he never spoke ill of her and that it was all a big misunderstanding. He scratches the back of his neck in embarrassment and stammers that he just didn't want her to misunderstand. The young woman remains in absolute silence, observing the sincerity and nervousness of the young man in front of her. Suddenly, she flashes a gentle smile, calming the boy by saying she's already forgotten all that nonsense. Jin-yong sighs in relief upon hearing that she wasn't upset, and she cheerfully suggests they return. The boy asks worriedly if she will be able to get down, and the young woman excitedly assures him that it will be much easier. She waves goodbye cheerfully and thanks the young man for his company all the way home before leaving. Jin-yong stands in the middle of the street, surprised by the lightness and sweetness with which she ended the conversation. Jason reappears deep in thought and points out that the girl's calm reaction is quite difficult to decipher. The boy becomes apprehensive, and Jason questions whether it was really necessary to have been so honest with her. The imaginary friend advises that sometimes silence is the best option to avoid creating more problems. As she walks away, Jin-yong wonders what's going through her mind at that moment. Sunwoo walks thoughtfully back home under the beautiful, soft golden light of the late afternoon. His sincere statement confessing that he wanted to get to know her better keeps echoing in the young woman's mind. She reflects with a wry smile that the boy sometimes surprises her with very direct words. She calmly walks towards her residence, taking quiet steps along the sidewalk. Suddenly, the accumulated fatigue takes its toll, and the girl collapses to her knees on the floor, completely breathless. The day dawns sunny, and the school routine resumes with all the typical student activity. Jason is intrigued by what he sees and wonders what it is. Jason comments that the boy is going to play soccer after a long time, and Jin-yong simply confirms. The little man says it's good for him to sweat to become more of a man, and Jin-yong ends up agreeing with the idea. Suddenly, the student's eyes widen as he notices something strange in the path. He notices that the lace on his shoe has come undone right there. Without thinking much, he bends down in the middle of the hallway to tie his shoe. The boy gets a fright and wonders what the hell is going on. Han-jail asks who told him to suddenly crouch down in the middle of the road and call him by name. She says she almost tripped and died because of him and asks if he wants to die. Jin-yong becomes completely tense and tries to apologize to teacher Han-jail. She pushes his head down and orders him not to look at her. The boy asks the reason for that, and she questions if he really needs to ask. The woman explains that it looks ugly when viewed from below, and that girls hate being looked at from that angle. She adds angrily that it's shameful and calls him a brat. She leaves, warning him never to stop suddenly while walking again. The boy remains silent, simply watching her walk away down the hallway. Jin-yong doesn't care much about the insults, because to him she just looked like a stone statue. Because of the trauma and panic of being rejected, he began to see all women as stones. To ensure he would never go through that again, he decided to focus entirely on his studies. He felt the need to evolve and began to dedicate himself intensely to training and personal development. And the result of all this physical effort is shown when he kicks the ball with extreme force. The goalkeeper tries to stretch fully to make the save, but the ball goes straight into the net, sealing the goal. The classmates celebrate happily and express their gratitude for having such a good player on their team. While the team celebrates, the opposing goalkeeper becomes quite frustrated with the goal conceded. From afar, two girls passing by start paying attention to the game. They comment that the boys are playing and that the room will smell of sweat later. One of them indicates that Jin-yong is also playing, and the other confirms that it's true. Suddenly, a cheer from a female fan catches the attention of the two girls. They see several female students in the stands commenting on how amazing the boy is and how he stands out. Sunwoo discreetly observes the movement as he hears Jin-yong's name being shouted. Fans comment that he is quiet but looks very charming while playing, and that he doesn't seem to care about girls. Sunwoo's friend laughs and tells her not to listen to those girls' comments. She questions why he's so popular in jokes, that saying he's sexy is an exaggeration. Sunwoo stares thoughtfully at the field while holding her lollipop. She remembers how nervous and awkward the boy gets around her and can't help but laugh. With a very pretty smile on her face, she finally agrees that he really does have his charm. The school bell rings, signaling the end of the activity, and everyone begins to go home. The boys celebrate the victory achieved thanks to Jin-yong's excellent performance. Feeling completely soaked in sweat, the boy decides to go to the outside sink to cool off. He turns on the tap and lets the cold water run freely down the sink. He carefully splashes water on his face to relieve fatigue and wipe away the sweat from the game. While cleaning himself up, he hears someone praising the impressive kick he made. Goalkeeper Juman appears, saying that he didn't think anyone could get past his defense. Jin-yong recognizes his teammate and makes a point of praising his excellent performance in goal. Juman makes a sulky face, saying he's very hurt by all of this. The goalkeeper asks if he knows the dark side of football, and Jin-yong says he doesn't care about that. Jiuman dramatically explains that when the team loses, the blame always falls entirely on the goalkeeper's shoulders. He complains that defending 10 shots is pointless if one gets past him, and concludes by saying that he doesn't like his rival. The big guy confesses, staring the boy down, that he doesn't like him precisely because he didn't block the kick. Jason appears furious with an axe in his hand, wanting to attack the goalkeeper for speaking that way. Juman fills his hand with water from the tap while announcing that he has something special for his rival. The goalkeeper throws all the water right in Jin-yong's face, saying it's a gift. The boy complains immediately because of the extremely cold water hitting his face. Jin-yong retaliates by throwing water back and curses at the goalkeeper, asking if he's gone crazy. Two start a childish water fight, exchanging silly insults in the middle of the dispute. From afar, the two girls hear the shouting and are confused, not understanding anything that is happening. Sunwoo's friend recognizes the boys' voices arguing and asks why there's so much commotion. Curious about all the mess, they decide to walk over there to see firsthand what the two of them invented. After all that running around and splashing water, the two are completely exhausted and out of breath. Jin-yong angrily complains, saying he's completely soaked and feels terrible because of himself. The goalkeeper simply starts taking off his own shirt, completely ignoring the rival's drama. Irritated, Jin-yong also decides to take off his wet clothes, while threatening to finish him off after class. At that moment, the girls appear and ask why they haven't gone in yet since the bell rang. Jin-yong is caught off guard shirtless, showing off his incredibly defined and muscular physique. The girls are completely shocked and speechless when they come across that unexpected scene. The atmosphere becomes extremely awkward, and they can't take their eyes off the young man's body. The chubby goalkeeper just watches the whole situation, not understanding the girls' astonishment. Upon looking at Juman, the two immediately change their expressions, showing considerable disgust. They turn around angrily, saying it was a vision from hell, as they leave. The chubby guy is outraged by their disdain, while Jin-yong remains devastated in silence. The boy becomes desperate when he realizes that Sunwoo ended up seeing him practically naked. Blaming his rival for the whole disaster, Jin-yong jumps on his back and applies a rear naked choke. The following day, the school routine resumes with the students returning to their activities. Jin-yong gives his all during the soccer match and unleashes a powerful shot towards the goal. This time, Jiumin manages to hold the ball firmly with his body, making a great save. Jin-yong is completely surprised to see that his powerful kick was stopped so easily. Teammates praise the impressive save, and the goalkeeper smiles victoriously, holding the ball. With a provocative look, the goalkeeper asks what's wrong with the boy that day. Jiumin mocks him, saying he's kicking weakly, and Jin-yong gets annoyed, muttering a curse. Jason notices the boy's drop in performance and comments that he really doesn't seem to be in good shape. Jin-yong decides to take advantage of the end of the first half to rest a bit in the stands. He sits slumped on the cement step, trying to regain some energy. Letting out a long sigh, the boy tries to relax, ignoring the presence of the stone girls in the background. A familiar voice above him suddenly comments that he looks very tired. Jin-yong looks up and sees Sunwoo greeting him with a friendly smile. He stammers her name, completely flushed due to the girl's sudden approach. The boy is inwardly desperate as he recalls the embarrassing situation from the previous day. He desperately asks her to bend down, and Sunwoo is confused, not understanding the request. Jin-yong hides his face in embarrassment and realizes that the teacher's words made perfect sense. He finally understands why women previously seemed like graceless statues from that perspective. Seeing Sunwoo from that low angle, he realizes how embarrassing that view is. She sits next to him and jokingly asks if he doesn't want to look at her face. He timidly explains the advice he received about people looking ugly when viewed from below. Sunwoo smiles amusedly and asks if she also looks ugly from below, making him desperately deny it. Jin-yong ends up confessing very shyly that she actually looks even prettier that way. The boy turns his face away, extremely embarrassed, immediately after giving such a direct compliment. Sunwoo rests his face on his hand and smiles slightly, his cheeks flushed from his declaration. On the other hand, Jin-yong internally freaks out, questioning what possessed him to say that out loud. Jason reappears, analytically pointing out that the young man fell right into the girl's trap again. The imaginary friend teases the boy about the compliment, while he desperately begs for help on what to do. Jason says he has to solve this alone, leaving his friend even more desperate for help. The boy bitterly regrets what he said, knowing that trying to fix it would only make things worse. Sunwoo remains silent, but her face betrays that she loved hearing those words from him. She rests her cheek on her hand and looks at the boy with an extremely gentle and sweet expression. The girl sincerely thanks him for the compliment, leaving him speechless with her gentle reaction. She asks if he said that to please her, and the young man is surprised that she overlooks what happened. With a smile, she comments that compliments are always great to hear, and he agrees somewhat awkwardly. Sunwoo says he always hears other girls complimenting him on being cool and sexy, which scares him quite a bit. He gestures and desperately denies everything, stating that he is nothing like what they say. The young woman comes closer and says that in her opinion, the girls who say that are not wrong, completely embarrassed. Jin-yong stammers as she asks in what sense she thinks they are right. She flashes a mysterious smile and prepares to reveal what she really thinks about the boy. Jin-yong immediately recalls the embarrassing moment when he appeared shirtless in front of her. Sunwoo raises his hand to whisper very close to his ear with a provocative expression. She leans in and whispers that she finds him attractive in absolutely every possible way. The boy is completely shocked, his cheeks flushed red, upon hearing such a bold revelation. She continues to stare at the boy with an amused glint in her eyes, enjoying the impact she made. A colleague calls Jin-yong, warning that the second half is about to begin, breaking the intimate atmosphere. He jumps up startled to return to the football field, still processing what he has just heard. Sunwoo waves from afar with a wide smile and shouts, wishing him good luck in scoring a goal. The boy stands frozen in the middle of the pitch while the other players urge him to start. Mentally, he talks to his imaginary friend, saying that he doesn't know how to explain what he's feeling. Jin-yong recalls that he lacked enthusiasm at the beginning, but now he runs towards the ball with complete determination. He dribbles past opponents with extreme ease, feeling his body incredibly light and agile. Jason appears with his arms crossed, laughing and sarcastically wondering the reason for so much energy. The imaginary warrior humorously states that Jin-yong already knows the answer very well deep down. He points out that all this sudden willingness happens solely because Sunwoo is watching. Jason hesitates for a moment and says that what he's about to say goes against his own previous advice. With a knowing smile, the warrior implies that perhaps it's worth making an exception this time. Jin-yong's powerful shot hits the corner perfectly, giving the goalkeeper no chance to defend. The big guy flies for the ball but can't reach it, and Jason concludes that the boy's fantasies aren't so bad after all. The team celebrates the great goal, and everyone praises the powerful shot that secured the winning point. Jin-yong breaks into a beautiful smile and laughs with happiness, feeling extremely fulfilled and confident. Sitting in the stands, Sunwoo watches everything, very happy to see his friend's success on the field. She smiles with her eyes closed, radiating a sweet and extremely happy aura because of the boy's victory. The clear sky crowns the end of a perfect school day that will surely leave them with good memories. The teacher walks by, observing the two talking, and thinks to herself that Jin-yong is very lucky. The following day, the routine resumes at school with classes returning to their usual flow. Later, Jin-yong arrives at his residence tired after the end of another long school day. He suddenly hears an argument coming from the kitchen and stops, curious to hear what's going on. Her parents are at the dinner table, discussing why her father will have to work on the weekend and cancel the outing. The mother complains about the lost tickets, but the father soon notices his son's arrival and interrupts the conversation. In the morning, the boy gets ready to leave, and his loving mother asks if he has already had breakfast. He says he'll just grab a quick bite to eat on the way, but his mother insists he should eat properly. Although he admits to himself that he is quite hungry, he still hesitates to sit there with them. Jin-yong confesses that eating in the presence of his strict father still causes him a very uncomfortable feeling. Jason appears eating an elegant banquet and advises the boy to eat well to stay healthy. The mother shows 2 tickets she received from a neighbor and invites her husband to go out together on the weekend. She hands Jin-yong the theater tickets, suggesting he go see the show with a friend from school. She laments that her father will have to work, and the man pretends not to care, clearing his throat while continuing to eat. Jin-yong stares at the 2 theater tickets in his hands, thoughtfully considering what to do with them. The boy immediately wonders who he should go on the weekend trip with. One of his friends apologizes, saying he'll probably get sick on the day of the play. Another colleague declines the invitation, explaining that he already has urgent commitments scheduled with his club. Even goalkeeper Juman dismisses the idea, stating that theater isn't really his style. Jin-yong gets quite frustrated when he sees all of his first choices declining the invitation. He jokingly comments that he thought the goalkeeper preferred anime, and that's why he wouldn't accept. Ji-yuman is outraged by the comment and retorts that he doesn't even watch that kind of cartoon. The big guy says goodbye, mentioning he's going to the snack bar, and leaves the pensive young man behind. He wonders why he so automatically assumed that his colleague liked those animations. Jason wisely points out that the stereotypes we create in our minds can be frightening. The imaginary friend questions what the boy will do now that all his options have rejected him. Jin-yong gives an awkward laugh, pretending not to care, while trying to come up with a new plan. Jason stares at him very seriously and demands that he be completely honest with himself. The warrior asks directly if his true desire isn't to invite Sunwoo for the ride. Jason says that before he was dominated by fear, but now he can only think about the girl he likes. The invisible friend advises that the ideal moment has arrived for the boy to take real action. Suddenly, Professor Han Gile calls him, abruptly interrupting his thoughts. She crosses her arms with a stern look and asks if he doesn't intend to greet his teacher. The boy apologizes, startled, and she comments that she already suspected as much since he'd been talking to himself. With a wry tone, she asks if he usually creates imaginary friends to chat with. Jin-yong panics completely, wondering how she could possibly know about Jason's existence. The two decide to sit on a patio bench to talk more quietly and privately. She asks directly if there is any girl he wants to bring to see the play. the teacher mentions that Sunwoo is quite popular, and the boy is terribly shocked by the revelation. Completely flushed and stammering, he desperately asks how she knew it was her. She reveals, laughing, that she heard the two whispering the previous day, and even imitates the silly compliment he gave her. Giles' expression changes to a more serious tone, and he stares intently at the young man before continuing. She gets straight to the point and asks if deep down, he's just afraid of being rejected by the girl. The boy lowers his head in defeat and timidly confesses that yes, and that it is very embarrassing. The woman explains that asking a girl out in front of everyone is basically equivalent to a date. She adds that such an invitation actually functions almost like a declaration of love. She gets up and calls him a cowardly brat as she starts to walk away, leaving the young man confused. She gives a confident smile and says mysteriously that one day he will thank her very much for this. Suddenly the teacher stops and loudly calls out Sunwoo's name, who was passing right nearby. She tells the girl that Jin-yong has something very important to say and tells her to go talk to him. Jin-yong is in complete despair, unable to understand why the teacher did such a thing to him. To make matters worse, the woman directly reveals that the young man wants to invite her to the theater on the weekend. Sunwoo's friend bursts into laughter and mocks him, saying he was a coward for using the teacher to invite. Giles walks away waving and tells the girl to go talk to Jin-yong quickly so they can sort this out. Sunwoo walks happily towards the boy, waving as he only wishes to disappear from there. He remembers the teacher saying that direct invitation was equivalent to a marriage proposal. With a dazzling smile, Sunwoo asks her face if he would like to go to the theater with her. The boy is completely paralyzed and breathless at that direct yet sweet question. He tries to form a word, but his mind completely shuts down at her proximity. Almost without thinking, Jin-yong simply stammers yes, accepting the invitation that seemed like a declaration of love. The weekend finally arrives and the young man shows up, dressed up, waiting for her at the agreed-upon location. Jason suddenly appears on his shoulder, pointing out that he actually managed to set up the date with Sunwoo. The boy admits he acted on pure impulse, but mentally thanks the teacher for the little push she gave him. He asks if he doesn't look strange with the new contact lenses, and the warrior compliments the young man's appearance. Jason seriously says that looks aren't the most important thing right now, leaving the guy tense. The imaginary friend asks, very directly, what kind of relationship he really wants to have with Sunwoo. Jason stares at him seriously and states that the young man needs to make this important decision right now. The warrior says it's obvious the boy harbors very strong romantic feelings for the girl. He points out that after the invitation, she must have already perceived his intention on some level. Jason reminds the boy that he has an extreme and almost uncontrollable fear of being rejected. He warns that approaching her carelessly could bring back all those nightmares from the past. The warrior advises that forgetting these feelings now would be the safest way to avoid rejection. The boy becomes sad and wonders how it would be possible to simply erase a feeling that already exists. Jason stares intently at him and reminds the young man that he has done exactly that in the past. The warrior suggests that the boy use his old tactic of seeing Sunwoo only as a stone statue. With a serious expression, Jason prepares to give his final verdict on the boy's choices. He says that if Jin-yong wants to run away and see her as a stone, he will give her appropriate advice for that cowardice. Suddenly, Sunwoo appears crossing the street, wearing incredibly beautiful and charming casual clothes. The boy is paralyzed and completely blushing at the radiant beauty of Sunwoo, who has just arrived. Jason says that if he chooses to face the trauma, he, as a friend, will do everything to help him win her over. The girl gazes at him with a sweet and welcoming smile, patiently waiting for some reaction from the boy. The two stand facing each other under the soft, warm sunlight in the middle of the street. Jin-yong recalls that rejection is a painful experience that almost everyone goes through at least once in their life. He recalls with regret the time he was painfully rejected by his first childhood sweetheart. He remembers Jason's valuable advice to pretend that all the girls were just stone statues. He reflects that when a couple spends time together, it's natural for strong feelings of affection to arise. But viewing women as stones discouraged any desire for closeness, making his life much easier. Even knowing that rejection is part of everyone's life, he still feels unable to deal with it. The boy admits to himself that he has an absolute and paralyzing fear of going through all that again. The scene cuts back to the present, showing the beautiful facade of the coffee shop where the two met. Sunwoo finds it funny to see Jin-yong drinking espresso and jokingly says he looks very mature. He feels embarrassed and tries to explain himself, knowing that he only ordered that drink because it was the cheapest on the menu. Sunwoo excitedly comments that there's only an hour left until the play starts and says she's really looking forward to the outing. While taking a sip, Jin-yong laughs awkwardly, and his mind returns to the serious advice given by Jason. He wonders if treating her like a stone would destroy her feelings and prevent him from suffering future rejection. But he knows that if he decides to get closer to Sunwoo, he will have to face all his trauma head on. Looking sadly at his cup, he wonders if someone so frail would be capable of achieving this. After all, he spent years relying on this defense mechanism of turning all the girls to stone. Sunwoo snaps him out of his trance by suddenly asking what's going on in his head, startling the boy. The boy makes up the excuse that he drifted off into his thoughts because he thought the espresso tasted awful. The girl smiles and accuses him of lying, saying it was obvious he was thinking about something else important. She pretends to be angry because he's ignoring her and complains that he should have ordered a really sweet chocolate instead. Suddenly, Sunwoo says it took 2 hours and Jin-yong stares at her confused, not understanding what she's saying. She reveals that this was the exact time it took to put on makeup and get ready to meet him, and who spent hours choosing the best outfit, just to make sure she would be perfect for the outing. Jin-yong is shocked to hear her confess that she did all this for him, and she asks him not to travel anymore. With a sweet and very affectionate look, she gently asks him to pay attention only to her. The boy feels guilty for having been so rude as to cut off the conversation with her right there at the table. She gets up excitedly and says she forgives him this time because he's paying for the tour tickets. Sunwoo announces that their time is up, and the boy quickly gets up to accompany her to the theater. He decides to put all his fears aside for now, focusing only on enjoying the moment with her. The scene changes to the theater stage, showing the play beginning in front of the entire audience. The lead actress performs very dramatically, interpreting the famous role of Juliet on stage. The actor who plays Romeo responds comically that that's his name because his mother chose it for him. On stage, the actor continues his portrayal of Romeo, arguing in a comical way with Juliet. In the audience, both Sunwoo and Jin-yong are visibly bored and finding the play very sleepy. Then they go to a vending machine, and the boy offers to try and get a cute teddy bear for her. He ends up spending a lot of money on the machine without success, while Sunwoo enjoys laughing at him. At the karaoke bar, Jin-yong sings terribly out of tune in a funny way, amusing the girl who happily claps along. At dinner time, she is very kind and cuts his food so that he can eat better. Walking together at night, she strikes up a conversation and asks about his relationship with a mutual friend. They continue chatting animatedly and sharing heartfelt laughs along the way back. The outing flows extremely naturally, with the two thoroughly enjoying each other's company. Sunwoo lets out a relieved sigh, commenting that that day was incredibly fun for her. She warmly thanks him for walking her home, and the boy replies that it was a pleasure. She says goodbye, telling him to be careful, and Jin-yong only confirms with a shy nod. Sunwoo turns around and notices that he is still standing there with a hesitant expression on his face. She asks if there's anything he wants to say, since he seems very nervous and awkward. Jin-yong stammers, trying to muster the courage to say how amazing that date was for him, and that his greatest wish was to be able to go out alone with her again to have fun in the same way. The boy wanted to confess once for all that he really hoped she would accept their next date. Sunwoo stares at him, intrigued, waiting for his words as he tries to overcome his shyness. But insecurity gets the better of him, and the boy just lets out a weak, awkward laugh. He just shouts that he'll see her at school and runs off in a hurry, leaving the girl completely confused. Sunwoo playfully gets annoyed and hits him with her bag, complaining that he made her tense for nothing. Then she runs happily towards the gate, waving a final goodbye to him. Jin-yong stands alone on the dark sidewalk, feeling an enormous weight on his chest for not having had the courage. Saying I wanted to see her again seemed like a simple task, but the insecurity was unbearable. He realizes that the fear of suffering a terrible rejection still governs his most intimate actions. Just imagining her making up a polite excuse to refuse another invitation terrifies him. Jin-yong concludes that keeping his distance is the safest way to avoid getting hurt in the future. He suspects that Sunwoo may have only accepted that outing out of pure obligation imposed by the teacher. Afraid of repeating the failure of years ago, he decides he needs to recover his old mental shield. The boy decides that with enough effort, he will be able to see Sunwoo only as a stone statue. He makes this commitment to himself to push away his feelings before the friendship progresses further. But suddenly he remembers Sunwoo telling him to order something other than coffee next time. That sudden, sweet memory shatters your rigid reasoning and confounds your entire escape plan. He visualizes in his mind the flawless image of her, standing there smiling affectionately at him in the middle of the street. Sunwoo cutely suggesting that on their next date, he should order a delicious hot chocolate. The boy is completely stunned to realize that this memory prevents any attempt at blocking it. Jason reappears with a smile on his face, observing the boy's internal struggle with great attention. He asks if his friend will really choose the cowardly path of turning that beautiful girl into stone. Jason promises to support any decision, but points out that running away from fears is only a temporary solution. The warrior remembers that he acted exactly like this in the past and affectionately calls him back to the real world. With a more focused gaze, Jin-yong asks his friend how he looks at that moment. The warrior honestly points out that the boy allowed someone else to extend the invitation to him. He lists all of his friend's shy mistakes, from getting distracted on the date to being afraid to ask her out again. Jason claims that the boy now wants to back away solely out of fear of becoming too intimate with Sunwoo, and the only way out he sees is to revert to the cowardice of facing her, as if she were a lifeless statue. The warrior apologizes for the harsh tone, but makes it clear that he is only listing the real facts. He sighs and implies that the whole situation is truly regrettable for a real man. Jin-yong lets out a bitter smile and wholeheartedly agrees that he acted like a complete failure. Suddenly, an image of two hands holding each other very affectionately flashes through the boy's mind. He imagines himself taking the initiative and holding Sunwoo's hands under the beautiful night light. Sunwoo is quite confused and lets out a surprised expression upon hearing what he just said. Jin-yong humbly apologizes and promises that next time he will take her to see a much better play. He awkwardly explains that she ended up falling asleep out of boredom and wants to apologize for it somehow. Sunwoo stares at the boy with wide eyes and flushed cheeks at his friend's sincerity. Suddenly, she lets out a hearty laugh, finding the whole situation extremely cute and funny. The girl confesses with a smile on her face that she had been waiting for this gesture from him for a while. He apologizes again and promises that on their next date, he will take her to a much more fun place. Jin-yong admits that the previous outing was so boring that she ended up actually falling asleep. Sunwoo listens to that in silence with a surprised expression and slightly flushed cheeks. She bursts into laughter in a very friendly way, completely easing the tense atmosphere of the moment. The young woman happily reveals that she had been eagerly waiting to hear those heartfelt words from him. A soft and welcoming silence fills the room as the two gaze at each other closely. Driven by the impulse of the moment, Jin-yong gathers his courage and tenderly holds Sunwoo's hands. But then the boy comes to his senses and lets out an exclamation of pure nervousness at his daring attitude. He starts stuttering, profusely apologizing for the sudden touch, while she calms down, laughing at the scene. Sunwoo tells him to share what's on his mind and says she's looking forward to their next meeting. The two say goodbye, affectionately wishing each other a safe and sound home. As she he walks away, the boy places his hand on his chest, feeling his heart racing. Sunwoo continues on his way with a thoughtful look and a more serious expression on his face. Shortly after, she flashes a sweet, expectant smile, showing that she enjoyed the moment. The following day, the school routine resumes with a sunny and peaceful atmosphere at the school. Jin-yong appears panting, exhaling with considerable difficulty due to the effort he is making. The boy is exercising intensely on a fixed iron bar in the playground under the daylight. He counts the repetitions mentally and reflects that he usually works out whenever something worries him. Jin-yong remembers that he promised Sunwoo a future date and ponders its meaning. Jason's ghost praises his friend's courageous decision to overcome his fear of rejection and get closer to her, but in practice things don't seem so simple, and he wonders how he will achieve this approach. A girl in a pink coat approaches and asks how many sets of exercises he has left. He replies that there are 3 sets left, but mentally complains that his joints ache with each climb. Suddenly, the girl in the pink hoodie approaches him from behind, playfully calling him a kid. Jin-yong gets a huge fright from the surprise appearance and shouts, asking who she really is. The girl walks away laughing kindly and calmly introduces herself, revealing that her name is Sukyung. Sokyung smiles excitedly, commenting that it's a huge coincidence to bump into him there. Jin-yong is confused upon hearing her name and tries to figure out where he knows the girl in the pink coat from. He remembers that she is Sunwoo's friend and recognizes the curious stone-like shape of her face. Sokyung insistently asks him to do another round of pull-ups like he did before. Jin-yong is a little awkward, but ends up agreeing to the unusual request and positions himself on the pull-up bar. But as soon as he starts to stand up, the girl lets out a scandalous scream of pure astonishment. Sokyung delivers a precise flying kick to him, asking who the hell does pull-ups in such a bizarre way. The boy falls hard onto the grassy ground and rolls in pain, feeling the violent impact of the sudden blow. Jin-yong complains of severe pain while massaging his head and angrily asks what she thinks she's doing. The girl explains that doing the exercise the wrong way destroys the joints, instead of improving their health. Then she says she's just going to change clothes and asks the boy to wait for her in that same place. He is completely confused and complaining that he still has 3 more sets of exercises to complete. Sokyung firmly insists that he wait there while she goes to change, and he eventually gives in, confused. Alone again, Jin-yong tries to process what just happened, wondering what that girl's problem is. Jason thoughtfully observes the situation from afar and concludes that this represents an excellent opportunity. The warrior encourages the boy by reminding him of the classic military strategy of knowing oneself and the enemy. The boy agrees, recalling that last time they got valuable information about Sunwoo from the chubby guy. Jason explains that before, the goal was not to be swayed by her charm, but now the goal has changed. Jin-yong understands that he should ask Sokyung about Sunwoo in a very subtle and natural way. Jason comments that she'll certainly be of much more help than that chubby kid from school. It doesn't take long before the girl returns to the playground wearing much more comfortable clothes for training. He asks curiously what exactly has changed in her appearance since the pink coat remains exactly the same. The boy gets annoyed and asks if she wants to fight after being called a rock again. Sokyung ignores the provocation and insists that he only do one push up so she can assess his posture. Jin-yong takes the initiative and directly asks if she is really that close to Sunwoo. She confirms that yes, and is confused by the sudden topic until she finally understands everything. The girl throws it in his face that he likes Sunwoo, leaving the boy completely speechless with the discovery. He tries to disguise his nervousness by saying it's just curiosity, but she doesn't fall for that lame excuse. She jokes that even a chicken walking down the street could tell he's head over heels for her. To everyone's surprise, a chicken actually appears, shaking its head and confirming her joke. The young woman earnestly warns that winning Sunwoo's heart will be no easy task. She agrees that popularity is part of the difficulty, but makes it clear that there's more to the story than meets the eye. Sokyung explains with a reflective look that her friend tends to be quite a mysterious person in her daily life. She reveals that Sunwoo is always very friendly with everyone at school, and that she's super easy easy to get along with. Although the two spend most of their time together at school, there is still something that bothers her. The girl confesses that even though they are best friends, she has no idea what really goes on in Sunwoo's head. She explains that no matter how much they joke or talk, her friend almost never touches on personal matters. Sook-young confides that sometimes she feels like her colleague is keeping a huge amount of secrets. She boasts about being his closest friend, but warns the guy to prepare to have his heart broken. Jin-yong becomes thoughtful as he remembers that his other classmate also used the mysterious word to describe the girl. As he hurries back to his workouts, he reflects that he never sensed this mysterious side of her. Sook-young delivers another well-aimed kick to the boy, telling him to stop daydreaming and focus on training once and for all. In pain, the boy questions why she forces him to do this and asks if she's really good at sports. He asks if he looks weak in her eyes, but receives only another comparison to a gray stone. The girl flashes a confident smile and begins to unzip her pink coat to prove her point. She takes off her coat, revealing that despite appearing ordinary, she is extremely athletic and good at physical activities. Sook-young flaunts a very well-defined physique and playfully teases him to prevent him from falling in love with her. Jin-yong is completely paralyzed and speechless as he stares closely at the girl's athletic body. In the boy's imagination, she continues to look like a large stone statue sculpted in gym clothes. He awkwardly comments that she's full of herself, but the young woman simply agrees happily with the indirect compliment. Meanwhile, in the park, several people are walking peacefully, including Sunwoo herself, who is strolling around there. Sunwoo walks holding a white plastic bag with some groceries he just bought at the market. She wears comfortable workout clothes with a dark cap while enjoying the sunny day outdoors. Suddenly, she hears familiar voices coming from afar and stops in her tracks with a rather curious expression. Two students walk by chatting excitedly about the physical education teacher being secretly very handsome. Sunwoo lowers his cap slightly upon realizing that the two gossips are actually classmates from his own class. They continue commenting on the professor's alleged interest in another teacher while walking right past her. Sunwoo continues on his way in absolute silence. Pretending not to pay attention to the conversation he just overheard, the young woman lets out a long, tired sigh, but soon hears Sook-young's voice shouting training orders nearby. Intrigued by the familiar screams, she turns toward the sound to find out what's going on. She sees Sook-young giving strict instructions, while the boy struggles to do exercises on the iron bar. Sunwoo watches the scene intently, seeing his friend's desperation as he begs for mercy from his trainer. The boy gathers his last strength and pulls himself up onto the bar under the careful and dedicated supervision of Sunwoo's friend. Seeing the two interacting so playfully, Sunwoo can't help but break into a sweet smile. Sook-young loses patience with the poor execution and pushes the boy aside to demonstrate the correct technique. She holds the iron bar firmly, demonstrating the ideal grip he should use to avoid injury. Next, she performs the push-up with ease, using the strength of her back and showing off her defined muscles. She completes the movement cleanly and flawlessly, showing that she has a perfect understanding of physical education. Sook-young complains to Jin-yong, saying that the exercise is easy and she doesn't understand why he finds it so difficult. Jin-yong is impressed by how easily Sook-young hangs from the iron bar. At that moment, Sunwoo appears, praising Sook-young, and ends up startling Jin-yong, who wasn't expecting her there. Sook-young is overjoyed to see her friend and shouts Sunwoo's name while happily waving to her. Jin-yong wonders what Sunwoo is doing there and thinks about how she always appears out of nowhere. Sook-young explains that she was just teaching Jin-yong how to do pull-ups, and Sunwoo jokes that she loves giving advice. Sook-young notices a rooster nearby and Sunwoo thinks the animal is very cute, while Jin-yong says he doesn't know where it came from. Sunwoo continues to stare thoughtfully at the animal, while the others chat around her. Jin-yong greets Sunwoo in a somewhat shy manner, and she responds kindly by waving back. Jin-yong watches the two girls hanging from the bar and says says that even standing there is difficult for him. Jin-yong mentions that Sunwoo has anemia, and she asks if he's mocking her, prompting the boy to apologize. Seok-young invites Sunwoo to try doing push-ups and offers to help by lifting her up. Seok-young then asks Jin-yong to stand in front of them and count the repetitions of the exercise, and he agrees. Seok-young supports Sunwoo by the waist and tells her to climb slowly without fear while Jin-yong watches from the front. Sunwoo tries to pull himself up on the bar and realizes that the exercise is extremely difficult, even with his friend's help. Suddenly, Sunwoo's eyes widen as he realizes something strange is happening at that very moment. She notices that Jin-yong is standing right in front of her, staring intently in her direction with a thoughtful expression. The boy continues staring at Sunwoo without looking away for even a second, making the atmosphere somewhat tense. Sunwoo starts to blush intensely and feels awkward at her colleague's sudden stare. Seok-young asks why Sunwoo stopped moving and urges her to continue climbing the pole, pressured by her friend. Sunwoo tries to force herself to stand up, even though she is mortified with embarrassment. She tries her best while feeling her cheeks burn even more because of the embarrassing situation. Actually, Jin-yong was just daydreaming and wondering what the deal was with that strange rooster from earlier, but Sunwoo doesn't know this and continues to suffer in the bar, completely embarrassed by the boy's supposed stare. Suddenly, Sunwoo's hands slip from the iron, and she completely loses her balance, startling everyone there. She lets out a scream and falls directly on top of Seok-young, who ends up cushioning her friend's fall. Jin-yong is startled by the sudden noise and turns around to see the two of them sprawled on the ground in a very strange pose. He approaches, confused, asking what happened while the two remain lying on the ground. Saying nothing, Jin-yong says he warned her not to overexert herself because of her anemia, but Sunwoo grumbles that wasn't the reason. Sunwoo desperately apologizes while Seok-young just murmurs in pain, stretched out on the park floor. Seok-young complains that Sunwoo was daydreaming during practice, and that Jin-yong wasn't even counting the reps. With that, Seok-young finally loses her temper completely, leaving her two friends terrified by her anger. Seok-young lifts Sunwoo into the air with extreme ease and threatens to finish them both off right there in the park. The two's cries of apology echo loudly through the park as they try to escape the girl's fury. Time passes and dusk arrives, painting the sky with shades of orange above that peaceful neighborhood. Sunwoo and Jin-yong walk by side back home under the sunset light after that exhausting workout. Sunwoo comments that it left her exhausted, and Jin-yong agrees even though he did practically nothing all day. Sunwoo suggests with a smile that it would be good for Jin-yong to learn some exercises from Seok-young, and he says he'll think about it. Jin-yong reflects that his plan to get to know Sunwoo better in order to devise a strategy didn't go very well that day, but he enjoyed training with her, and Master Jason agrees, saying that these plans should proceed very slowly. Upon reaching a corner, Jin-yong announces that he will continue that way and bids Sunwoo a friendly farewell. He says he'll go and see her at school tomorrow, but notices Sunwoo hesitating, as if she wants to say something more. Jin-yong asks what happened, and if she wanted to say something, but Sunwoo remains silent for a few moments, staring at him. She ends up changing the subject, saying it wasn't anything important, leaving the boy quite curious and confused about it. Sunwoo then flashes a huge, radiant smile that makes the atmosphere between the two incredibly light and relaxed. She says it was just silly curiosity and cheerfully bids farewell, continuing on her way while Jin-yong waves back. The boy stands in the street wondering why she spoke in that mysterious way and feels his heart race. At that moment, Master Jason lets out a long, dramatic sigh, and Jin-yong asks the reason for his friend's melancholy. Jason solemnly states that he doesn't fully understand a woman's heart either, but he perceives something quite obvious there. He claims to have the distinct impression that Jin-yong just gave the wrong answer, leaving the boy completely confused. As he walks back home, Jin-yong begs Jason to explain which part he got wrong. Jason asks when he's going to stop making bad decisions at crucial moments, leaving him even more confused. Across the street, Sunwoo gets quite a shock when he realizes that the mysterious rooster is still following him. The story cuts to that quiet night when Seok-young decided to go up to the school rooftop after class. It was around 9 o'clock at night, and she thought the school would be completely empty at that late hour. However, right in the middle of her stretching, Suk-young hears a soft melody that begins to echo through the silent school. She approaches the edge and listens attentively to the wonderful piano sound that seems to come from inside the school itself. Suk-young wonders who would be playing the piano so late, since the music room is right on the top floor of the building. Suddenly, a chilling shiver runs down Suk-young's spine as she realizes something terrifying about that song. In fact, she found the music so incredibly perfect and well played that she ended up getting goosebumps from the emotion. So Suk-young is telling all this in the hallway to Jin-yong, Sunwoo, and the other bespectacled classmate from their class. Jin-yong complains about the scary tone she used to tell him, while Sunwoo admits he was already terrified. To everyone's surprise, Jason is also terrified because the story reminded him of an ancient legendary creature. Sunwoo is impressed by the mysterious pianist's talent and wonders who in the school could be so amazing. The bespectacled colleague stares at Suk-young with a serious expression and asks if she really doesn't know about the local legend. He reveals that there is a well-known rumor at the school about the appearance of the dreaded ghost in the music room. The boy explains that there used to be a young woman who would stay up late playing the piano in the empty room every night. But, suddenly and tragically, that student ended up dying in the middle of one of her nighttime performances. According to rumors, she accidentally choked on a candy she was eating while playing the piano. Since that tragic day, they say it's possible to hear the instrument playing by itself, even when no one is inside. The boy concludes by saying that the melody Suk-young heard that night could very well have been the ghost's performance. Everyone falls into absolute silence, absorbing the bizarre ghost story the boy just told. Jin-young thinks that story about choking on candy is the most nonsensical urban legend he's ever heard. He turns to the side upon noticing a subtle movement and is surprised by the reaction of the person nearby. Sunwoo is trembling with fear beside her, and Jin-young is impressed by how easily she gets scared by these things. He finds it cute and funny to see that she is secretly so shy and fearful that she trembles at such a silly rumor. Suddenly, Teacher Han Jail appears in the hallway calling out to Jin-young and Sunwoo loudly, interrupting their conversation. She says they showed up at the perfect time and asks for help with some tasks in the teacher's lounge. If they aren't busy, Sunwoo and Jin-young accept immediately and accompany the teacher, leaving Suk-young and her classmate behind in the hallway. Suk-young asks the boy with glasses if that story was real, and he confesses that it was the first time he had heard about it. The boy with glasses confesses, laughing, that he made it all up on the spot just to see the scared faces of his two friends. He walks away proudly, having managed to terrify Sunwoo so easily, leaving Suk-young intrigued. Suk-young stands in the hallway looking suspicious as she processes the lie the boy told. She doesn't hide her indignation and thinks about how that boy is completely crazy for inventing something like that out of thin air. Time passes and night falls completely over the school, which is immersed in an absolute and somber silence. Jin-young comments warily about the hard work it was to correct so many tests while walking alongside Sunwoo. He feels a slight tug and turns around, noticing that Sunwoo is gripping the sleeve of his jacket tightly. Sunwoo is pale with fear, and Jin-young asks worriedly if she's feeling all right, as she seems scared. She tries to disguise it by giving an awkward laugh and says it's nothing, but Jin-young remains suspicious of her reaction. Jin-young asks if she's still scared because of the ghost story, and she desperately denies everything. Sunwoo pats him on the back, saying that ghosts don't exist and swears up and down that he's not scared. She repeats the story of the girl who choked to death on candy and keeps trembling so much that her lie becomes obvious. Suddenly, the two freeze in surprise in the middle of the hallway upon hearing musical notes echoing in the darkness. Sunwoo's eyes widen in fright as Jin-young tries to understand where that clear piano sound is coming from. He notices that the melody seems to be coming from the legendary music room and wonders who could be there so late. Sunwoo completely panics, thinking the ghost is real, but Jin-young assures him there's no chance of that happening. Jin-young says it must just be some student who stayed behind to practice, but stops talking when he sees a strange figure in the hallway. At the end of the dark corridor, completely black silhouette emerges, floating ominously towards them. Sunwoo is terrified when he sees that floating figure with two glowing eyes that looks like a real ghost. Even with Sunwoo terrified, Jin-yong tries to stay calm, thinking it's just someone playing a prank on them. Sunwoo starts trembling uncontrollably from sheer terror, and it becomes quite clear that she is about to have a breakdown right there. The mysterious dark figure with glowing eyes begins to glide down the dark corridor, heading directly towards the two of them. Sunwoo completely loses control of his emotions and lets out a deafening scream of despair that echoes throughout the school. She screams that the ghost of the choking girl is coming to get them and runs off, sprinting up the stairs. Jin-yong shouts, asking where she's going, while Sunwoo continues running desperately, calling for help. The dark figure was actually Professor Han, Yahello, who complained that they should go down the stairs instead of going up. She doesn't understand any of that reaction and wonders if by any chance they both thought she was a ghost. The teacher adjusts her glasses thoughtfully and wonders if she really looks that scary. She makes a very sad and discouraged face when she realizes that she accidentally scared her own students. Meanwhile, the moon shines brightly in the sky above the school terrace, where the two young people have just arrived. Jin-yong runs onto the rooftop completely out of breath after climbing all the steps. His eyes widen as he sees the scene before him, and he becomes extremely worried about his friend's condition. Sunwoo ended up fainting and is lying on the terrace floor after running so much in a state of pure panic. Jin-yong rushes to help her, and Sunwoo wakes up complaining about the stairs, while he deduces that it was due to her anemia. Sunwoo insists that something black chased her, but he tries to reassure her by saying she was just an ordinary person in the dark. Jin-yong blames Juman for inventing that macabre story, when suddenly the piano notes begin to echo again. The sound of the instrument starts again very clearly, drawing the attention of both of them in the middle of the silent terrace. Jin-yong thinks it's normal for ghost rumors to surface when such strange things happen at school so late. Seeing Sunwoo still very scared and trembling, Jin-yong realizes he needs to find a way to calm her heart. Suddenly, Jason appears in Jin-yong's mind dressed as a vampire, saying that this is an excellent opportunity. He explains that moments of fear are perfect for bringing couples closer and making Jin-yong much more intimate with Sunwoo. Jason says that when a man and a woman are together in a scary situation, something very special usually happens. At that moment, Sunwoo timidly extends his hand toward Jin-yong's arm, seeking some kind of protection. The boy is slightly startled when he feels her delicate touch firmly gripping the fabric of his uniform jacket. She looks away, blushing, and lets out a shy whisper as she tries to find the right words to say to him. Sunwoo admits very quietly that the sound of the piano playing by itself in the darkness is really very scary for her. Jin-yong feels his cheeks heat up at the sight of her vulnerability and remembers Jason's romantic advice. He realizes that he is about to experience firsthand the famous psychological effect of mutual attraction generated by danger. The boy blinks, confused, and tries to stay focused so as not to show how nervous he is about Sunwoo's physical proximity. She takes a deep breath and seems to relax a little more as she feels his firm and protective presence right beside her. She murmurs sweetly that the whole situation is leaving her completely confused and scared. Jin-yong mentally repeats that this is the ideal moment to make the famous suspension bridge effect work. He prepares to make a romantic move as a mysterious and intimate atmosphere fills the entire terrace. He recalls having read about this psychological theory that can bring two people closer together in moments of tension. The effect occurs when danger makes hearts beat faster, and the brain confuses this fear with passion. However, Jin-yong's plan falls apart when he notices that the piano music is actually extremely cheerful and festive. Sunwoo also notices the upbeat rhythm of the song, and his frightened expression transforms into one of pure peace. Jin-yong lets out an awkward laugh, praising the ghost's talent, and Sunwoo agrees in a very relaxed manner. She explains with expertise that the music is in waltz time, and he is surprised by her extensive knowledge. Sunwoo reveals with a smile that he took ballroom dancing lessons as a child, and Jin-yong finds that information incredible. She says that she and Jiumin were paired up when they were children, but the two were always fighting and throwing tantrums with the teacher. She eventually gave up dancing because she started prefer art classes and also because she developed anemia. Sunwoo praises Yumin, revealing that the chubby boy was considered a true prodigy genius in ballroom dancing. Jin-yong tries to visualize his chubby classmate dancing the waltz with such skill and finds the image too bizarre. He comments that ballroom dancing must be a lot of fun and admits that it's something totally outside his reality. Sunwoo thoughtfully places her finger on her chin, saying that it's been a long time since she attended classes. She flashes a wonderful smile, suggesting they take advantage of the fact that the supposed ghost is playing a beautiful background track. Suddenly, Sunwoo asks him to hold her hand, leaving the boy completely shocked and confused about her intentions. He hesitates, asking why, but she insists in a super cute way, making the boy shyly extend his hand. Under the moonlight and to the sound of a beautiful melody, Sunwoo slowly places his delicate hand on his open palm. She holds his hands firmly and says that now they are ready to begin their first steps. Sunwoo cheerfully advances, guiding the movement while becoming extremely nervous due to the physical proximity. But everything goes wrong when one of them ends up stepping badly on the other's foot, eliciting an agonizing cry of pain. Sunwoo doubles over in pain, clutching his own foot, and Jin-yong desperately apologizes 1,000 times for his mistake. She reveals that her leg still hurts from the kick she received from Seokyeong earlier and admits that she's terrible at dancing. Even though she's hurt, she says everything is fine and extends her hand again, inviting the boy for another try. Sunwoo tells him to take a quick spin and Jin-yong completely loses his balance mid-awkward turn. The boy completely loses his footing when his flap slips awkwardly on the terrace floor. He ends up falling backward onto the ground in a nasty tumble, leaving Sunwoo extremely worried and scared. Upon seeing the scene, she bursts into laughter while Jin-yong complains in embarrassment, clutching his still injured nose. Sunwoo gradually stops laughing and looks at him with a very sweet and affectionate gaze that melts the boy's heart. Jin-yong offers to try dancing one last time, and she excitedly agrees, showing that she wants to stay there. She jokingly says she'll break his foot if he steps on her again, making Jin-yong apologize in shock. He dramatically kneels down, begging her to teach him properly, and Sunwoo tries to find the right words. Jin-yong shyly extends his hand, mimicking an elegant gentlemanly pose, while the soundtrack continues in the background. Sunwoo is paralyzed for a moment by the boy's sudden and charming gesture right in front of her. She breaks into a radiant smile and expresses her genuine admiration for Jin-yong's sweet gesture. Sunwoo accepts the invitation, saying that he will also be under his care, creating a super romantic atmosphere on the terrace. The boy stares at her, his face flushed with happiness, feeling that this moment is simply perfect. She smiles serenely as the melody of the supposed ghost from the music room continues to accompany their romance. Jason appears narrating about that mysterious piano music that echoes through the nights at the school. Without anyone knowing who the author is, he explains that that strange melody was enough to create a real ghost story in someone else's head. However, Jason points out, at that exact moment, it's for two special people who are on the school's rooftop. That same haunting melody ended up becoming an unforgettable gift to unite their loving hearts. Night falls silently across the school campus as the classroom lights begin to go out one by one. As they leave the main building, Jin-yong strikes up a conversation with Sunwoo. Remembering something she had mentioned earlier, he asks if she still dedicates herself to art, and Sunwoo happily confirms that she continues to draw in her free time. Jin-yong shyly asks if she could draw a muscular, bearded man for him sometime. She says she's not very good at drawing people, but promises to try to make the drawing, making Jin-yong super happy. The boy thinks to himself how he had no idea that Sunwoo had such an interesting hobby of drawing. Jin-yong becomes thoughtful, remembering that there was also something special he would have loved to try with her. Suddenly, Sunwoo announces that he needs to go to the bathroom quickly and starts walking back inside the school. He asks worriedly if she'll be okay alone, and she replies, laughing, that she'll be back in just a few minutes. Jin-yong finds that attitude extremely strange and begins to reflect on Sunwoo's recent behavior. He remembers the overwhelming fear she felt before and doesn't understand how how she now walks alone in the dark school without fear. The boy wonders, intrigued, if she's gotten used to fear so quickly, or if there's more to this whole story. Jason appears in Jin-yong's imagination with a focused expression and states that the whole situation is very suspicious. Jin-yong asks what's suspicious, and Jason reminds him of the suspension bridge effect plan they tried to come up with earlier. Jason reveals that he has an incredible theory and questions whether that plan wasn't already working all along. Meanwhile, in the bathroom, Sunwoo stares intently at himself in the mirror and begins to apply a delicate lipstick to his lips. She calmly applies the lipstick and thinks about the whole legend of the mysterious ghost in the music room. Sunwoo lets out a mocking giggle, saying to herself that ghosts obviously don't really exist in this world. She complains, laughing, that her foot still hurts from being stepped on and affectionately calls Jin-yong a clumsy brute. The school's music room holds a secret that few people truly know. A hand gently opens the sliding door of the room, and the teacher asks the person inside if she has finished playing. Professor Han gently says that it's getting late and tells the person to pack their things and leave. The person at the piano is the young, pink-haired Yahello, Jin, who was playing that beautiful waltz that everyone heard earlier. Yahello, Jin lowers her head with a sad expression, as if she really wishes she could continue practicing a little longer. Yahello, Jin pleads in a very low voice to play one more song, but the teacher says she couldn't hear her whisper. Yahello, Jin shyly apologizes, and the teacher ends the day by saying it's time for the two of them to go home. A group of girls in the classroom ask Sunwoo what she thinks of a very interesting idea. They chat happily about how Sunwoo is super friendly and gets along really well with everyone at school. Sunwoo humbly replies that he doesn't know if that's exactly the case, but he's very happy with their affection. The bell rings and the focus shifts to the sign indicating the second-year high school classroom. Sunwoo is sitting at her desk with a pen in her hand, looking quite thoughtful about something important. She puts the pen in her mouth and lets out a low sigh as she remains lost in her own thoughts. She remembers Jin-yong's unusual request to draw a muscular, bearded man for him. Sunwoo thinks the theme he chose for the drawing is too vague and doesn't know where to begin. With that, she decides to get up from her chair, determined to go to Jin-yong's room to clear up this doubt. As soon as she opens the door to leave the place, someone calls her name in a very enthusiastic way. Her classmates Yuan and Subin run up and ask if she has a free minute. Sunwoo flashes a lovely, friendly smile and politely asks the two girls what they want. She greets her friends cheerfully, while the two of them giggle, keeping a little secret. Yuan holds out his phone, showing the screen to Sunwoo, who widens his eyes in extreme surprise at what he sees. Yuan explains that he records vlogs for the internet for fun, and that Sunwoo ended up appearing in the background of one of them. She proudly shows that the video views simply exploded after Sunwoo made his quick appearance. Yuan excitedly says that everyone in the comments is dying to know when Sunwoo will appear in another video. Sunwoo bursts into laughter at the revelation while Yuan says that netizens haven't stopped praising her beauty. Subin asks if Yuan will become a famous digital influencer, and Yuan excitedly agrees at the possibility. Yuan then invites Sunwoo to record a real vlog together, promising to buy her a snack if the video is profitable. Sunwoo thinks for a moment and ends up accepting the invitation in a very kind way, making his colleague very happy. Time passes and the scene shows the school's facade in daylight as students circulate around the campus. Suddenly, Jason appears with a rather serious look, announcing what his friend's big mission of the day will be. He tells Jin-yong to invite Sunwoo to the cafeteria with him, and the boy awkwardly agrees. Jin-yong thinks that direct invitation will reveal his ulterior motives, but Jason says that's nonsense. Jason reminds him that he needs to take action if he wants to get closer to Sunwoo, and the boy ends up agreeing that it's true. The young man states that he has already made up his mind and only needs to gather the courage to speak to her, receiving support from his master. He opens the sliding door of the classroom with his heart in his mouth, feeling an absurd nervousness take hold of him. But as soon as he steps into the room, Jin-yong encounters an unexpected situation that surprises him. He spots Sunwoo recording a vlog with her friends and pretending her name is a mystery to play a prank on her subscribers. The girls strike funny poses using fun filters on their cell phones and laugh a lot together during the recording. Jin-yong realizes that they are recording content for the internet and notices that Sunwoo is too busy at the moment. Thinking it's best not to disturb the girls' fun, he decides to turn around and return another time. However, just before he can leave for good, Sunwoo turns around and notices his presence at the door. Jin-yong leaves the room hurriedly without saying anything, leaving the girl quite curious and thoughtful about his behavior. She stares at the empty door with a thoughtful expression, feeling that she still needs to talk to him about something. With that, Jin-yong's plan to invite his beloved for lunch in the cafeteria fell apart right from the start. The mission completely failed because Sunwoo spent the whole day surrounded by friends and recording videos for the internet. Time flies by and classes finally come to an end, coloring the sky with an orange hue of late afternoon. Jin-yong laments the failure, saying that Sunwoo is too popular, and Jason agrees that it's difficult to compete with that. Jason comments that he didn't know she had so many friends, and Jin-yong praises the girl, saying that she really is amazing. Suddenly, Jin-yong hears someone shouting his name loudly in the middle of the street and turns around startled to see it's Sunwoo herself, who comes running up and jokingly asks if he's talking to himself in the middle of the road again. He tries to disguise it at the time, swearing that he wasn't talking to himself, making the girl let out a cute little laugh at him. She pats him on the back, saying she sees him do that all the time, and jokingly asks if he has an imaginary friend. Sunwoo says she doesn't have money for the bus fare again, and Jin-yong happily offers to walk her home. But, halfway there, a familiar voice from behind calls out to Sunwoo, completely ruining the mood between the two. It's their friends Yuan and Subin, who approach waving and celebrating, saying they found them at the perfect time. They approach Sunwoo and ask if she's busy, while Jin-yong just watches the scene, somewhat dejected. Yuan suggests they take advantage of the chance encounter to record the school vlog right away, and then notices the boy's presence. Yuan notices that Sunwoo was in good company and maliciously asks if she is dating Jin-yong. Subin nudges Yuan, warning her that they should leave so as not to disturb the couple's romantic mood. They say goodbye, promising to record the vlog tomorrow, and leave laughing, leaving the two alone on the street again. Sunwoo nods back with a somewhat forced smile while her friends comment on whether they're asking too much of her. However, Sunwoo's expression changes drastically to a blank and terrified look as soon as her friends walk away. As the girls walk and plan to buy her a snack later, Jin-yong observes Sunwoo's strange reaction. He wonders if those girls are really her friends. Realizing he knows almost nothing about Sunwoo's life, he recalls that Seokyoung had said that Sunwoo got along well with everyone, but that reaction left him with a nagging feeling. Jin-yong's eyes widen in confusion as he notices a frightening detail in the sudden behavior of the girl beside him. Sunwoo has an extremely tense and somber expression, looking like a completely different person than before. The boy is shocked and wonders what could be happening to leave her in such a state of deep agitation. He continues to observe her expression, unable to understand why Sunwoo suddenly seemed so distressed. She lets out a long, heavy sigh, trying to regain control of her emotions in the middle of the dark residential street. Out of nowhere, she starts smiling happily again and says she's a complete idiot, leaving the boy quite confused by the change. She shows her card and pretends she had forgotten that she had added credit to it the day before in a supernatural way. She says she needs to go somewhere else and that it's not necessary for him to accompany her home, and he simply accepts. Sunwoo waves goodbye with her back turned as she walks away alone, leaving Jin-yong standing there in absolute silence. The boy reflects on the strange expression she made and senses that there is something very disconnected and mysterious about her attitude. He finds himself repeating that phrase and tries to decipher why he felt such a sudden distancing from Sunwoo. In fact, that same feeling of strangeness had already been mentioned by his colleague Jiumin in a previous conversation. Jin-yong realizes that he has finally understood what Jiumin meant about Sunwoo's mysterious personality. Jason points out that Sunwoo was extremely upset by something trivial and even fled in a hurry to avoid remaining there. He confirms that this is the mystery surrounding her and asks what Jin-yong intends to do with it from now on. Jin-yong stands on the street with a determined look as he decides whether or not to investigate this secret further. The boy replies that yes, discovering the truth about her could be the ideal way for the two of them to get closer. Jason approves of the boy's determination and enthusiastically announces that the time has come to move on to his next big mission. The scene changes to the beginning of a rather dark and silent night in a tree, lined square in the neighborhood. The mission requires him to call the person closest to Sunwoo among all those he knows for a chat. Jin-yong knows exactly who she is and is preparing to finally uncover the whole hidden truth about her. The person he called is Suk-young, who arrives walking through the square and asks why he wanted to meet her so late. Suk-young jokingly tells him not to fall in love with her, but Jin-yong's real concern is finding out about Sunwoo. The two friends stand face to face in the empty square, about to begin a conversation that will reveal great secrets. Suk-young asks him to make it quick because she has a night shift, and Jin-yong is surprised to hear that. He reveals that the subject is Sunwoo, and the girl quickly understands what it's about. She thinks he wants romantic advice, and Jin-yong is surprised by this sudden assumption. Jin-yong reflects that talking to Jiumin would be very weird, which is why he preferred calling her. The night in the park is quiet as he gets ready to explain the situation. Sitting on the bench, Suk-young asks if Sunwoo's expression really looked strange that day. Jin-yong explains that she seemed way too agitated, and that it wasn't just a simple reaction to the vlog. He hopes that since Suk-young is so close to her, she might have seen something similar before. The girl looks thoughtful, resting her hand on her chin, trying to remember some important detail. She says she remembers a specific situation that might be connected to this, but to tell him, she demands that he promise to improve his posture during his pull-up workouts. Suk-young remembers a day at school when some students were gathered around, blowing out birthday candles. She called Sunwoo over to join their classmates for the celebration in the classroom. The other girls invited them to have some cake. Since it was Minyoung's birthday, Sunwoo seemed very uncomfortable and surprised when they asked if she already knew about the birthday. She stood completely frozen, staring at the floor with a very tense expression. The birthday girl looked at her with high expectations, waiting for a friendly reaction. Then Sunwoo tried to play it off by laughing loudly and saying she had completely forgotten about the date. To make up for it, she promised to buy the birthday girl dinner and wished her a happy birthday. Right after that, Sunwoo pulled Suk-young aside, saying she urgently needed to go to the restroom. Suk-young was intrigued, wondering if her friend had really forgotten something so important. However, the other girls started gossiping, saying that must have hurt Minyoung's feelings. They commented that Sunwoo usually pushed people away, even though she seemed very close to everyone. Suk-young heard the mean whispers and got extremely annoyed at what they were saying. She immediately worried if Sunwoo had also heard those unpleasant remarks. Walking out into the hallway, she saw her friend standing there in silence with a very downcast look. Suk-young looked at her face closely and noticed a sad expression she had never seen before. It seemed she had heard the gossip, but instead of anger, she only showed a melancholic resignation. Back in the present, she finishes by explaining that's exactly what happened back then. He argues that anyone would be upset to hear gossip, but Suk-young insists it was different. Jin-yong agrees that the whole situation seems much more complex than he initially thought. Suk-young keeps staring at him while thinking about Sunwoo's mysterious behavior. Suk-young asks what Jin-yong thinks about all this, and he's a bit confused by the question. She clarifies that she's talking about the fact that their classmate is extremely close to everyone at school. The girl admits she can't be absolutely sure because she's not in her shoes, but she has her suspicions. She confesses she started wondering if that extreme popularity might actually be a curse. The boy is left intrigued and silent, trying to process such an unusual theory about his friend. Suk-young stands up, letting him know her work shift is about to start and she needs to leave. Before walking away, she reminds Jin-yong that winning Sunwoo's trust won't be easy at all. She looks back with a serious expression and warns that he has a very difficult path ahead of him. Jin-yong just watches her leave, agreeing that Sunwoo truly is a mystery. He wonders how getting along with everyone could be considered a type of curse. He tries to find some logical connection between that old story and her tense face from the day before. He also remembers the weird feeling Juman kept mentioning in their recent talks. The young man admits to himself that he's completely lost and has no clear clues about the mystery. He turns to his inner detective, confessing that he's starting to doubt his own intelligence. The imaginary detective asks if he has any plan in mind to unravel this puzzle once and for all. Jin-yong decides that his only option right now is to think deeply about it. He realizes he must focus entirely on the problem until a piece of the puzzle falls into place. He reflects in the silence of the park that getting close to someone is really much harder than it seems. The next day, the school routine begins normally with classes and students moving around the campus. In the school hallway, Yuan is extremely surprised as she looks at her cell phone screen. She runs to show Sunwoo that the video they worked on surpassed 50,000 views. Yuan celebrates, saying the success is all thanks to Sunwoo's beauty, while her friend reacts shyly. Sunwoo praises her hard work and asks not to be forgotten when her classmate becomes a famous influencer. Yuan insists that her friend has to keep appearing in the videos because now the two of them are in this together. Sunwoo is surprised and hesitant at the idea of becoming a regular in her classmates' posts. She turns down the offer, but Yuan tries to convince her, even offering a share of the profits. The girl insists she feels too much pressure showing her face on the internet, while the others try to talk her into it. Yuan argues that she already has a lot of followers on Instagram, but another classmate tells her to take it easy. Not giving up, the girl asks to film just one more time to take advantage of all the attention they're getting. She pleads, explaining that tons of people in the comments are frantically asking about Sunwoo. Yuan says jokingly that she'll be upset if she refuses, and Sunwoo just gives an awkward laugh. The mood changes when Sunwoo crosses her arms and seriously says that her final answer is no. The two classmates are left completely frozen and shocked by her very direct and firm answer. An uncomfortable silence takes over the hallway as neither of them knows exactly how to react. Her look becomes extremely cold and distant, showing that the conversation is truly over. She quickly breaks the tension with a gentle tone, making up a silly excuse about her face to lighten the mood. Without waiting for an answer from her classmates, she simply turns around and starts walking back to her classroom. The two girls keep watching her leave with totally bewildered and confused expressions. Yuan asks indignantly if she was just ignored, and the other classmate agrees that it certainly seemed that way. The girl refuses to accept that attitude and starts getting visibly annoyed at how she was treated. She then questions if she was asking for something unreasonable, while her classmate tries to come up with a careful answer. Yuan complains, saying the offer was a good one and that her friend overreacted by turning it down. Nearby, Sunwoo overhears all the complaints from her classmate, who says she's extremely disappointed with her refusal. Yuan brings up the rumors that she's usually cold and claims she's finally starting to believe them. Sunwoo lets out a tired sigh, realizing that this exact same pattern is repeating itself once again. The unpleasant comments keep echoing as she hears that she should have refused more politely. Suddenly, the two girls' conversation in the hallway is interrupted by a sudden noise. Jin-yong approaches the group looking for her and ends up catching the attention of the other students. Hiding behind the wall, Sunwoo is startled when she realizes that the young man just appeared out of nowhere. The girls look confused by his presence as he stands silently in front of them for a few moments. He panics internally, realizing he was so distracted thinking about her that he answered on autopilot. He tries to hide his nervousness, claiming he just heard Sunwoo's name from a distance, and that's why he came over. Yuan answers harshly that it's none of his business, but soon seems to get a malicious idea. The girl remembers seeing the two of them together before on an occasion that drew a lot of attention. A gossipy smile spreads across Yuan's face as she prepares to ask a very direct and provocative question. She asks point blank if he and Sunwoo are dating, causing the young man to totally panic. Yuan then gives him a mysterious warning, saying that either way, he should be very careful with her. She whispers that there are many rumors about Sunwoo's cold and calculating behavior. Jin-yong listens carefully to every detail of the gossip, trying to process the harsh accusations. Yuan tries to get Subin's support, but the classmate is clearly hesitant to agree with her. Yuan says she's just warning him so he doesn't get played, even though she claims to have nothing against her friend. Sunwoo keeps listening to everything while hidden, feeling the weight of those twisted words about her character. Yuan tries to soften the mean tone of her gossip, while Subin desperately tries to get her to stop. The young man just watches the two of them interact with a serious and very suspicious look on his face. In his mind, the two girls look like actual stone statues with no real empathy for their friend. He asks himself angrily if those two have completely lost their minds, spreading such absurd lies.